Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the East Line Board of Ed's regular scheduled meeting. My name is Candace Carlson, and I will be filling in for Tim Hagan tonight as acting chair. Also, Jamie Shelbourne will be filling in for me as acting secretary. With that said, I'd like to call the meeting to order at 5:17, and ask you all to please join me in supporting.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With that said, I'd like to open up the public comment portion, and Jackie from central office will be helping us navigate this option because it is via Zoom. So for those who would like to address the Board of Ed, I do respectfully ask that you do please keep your comments to 3 minutes and under, just in the link to respect the time restraints of the agenda and the items that are going to be discussed tonight. Also, please state your name clearly along with your address for the accurate document.
Yeah. You might just have to be loud.
I'll go louder. So if Jackie can please open up the public comment.
This is Elizabeth Mondello. I was hoping to make a public comment. Is now a good time?
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi. First of all, can everyone hear me? Yes, thank you. Okay. So again, my name is Elizabeth Mondello. I live at 12 Black Oak Drive, East Lyme. I went to school here, lived here my whole life. I think it's a great town. We love the school system. So I was checking out your feed, and I had some thoughts on that, and this was specifically about the presentation on July 13th by the East Lyme Black Lives Matter group. I'm not trying to sound rude or provocative here, but I am concerned. Black Lives Matter is a national organization. It's openly Marxist. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that. Anti-family, anti-male, anti-free speech. I'm not trying to be funny here. It's on their website. And the co-founder, Patrisse Cullors, stated in 2015, we are trained Marxist. So that was concerning to find out that there's a significant involvement with a group that calls themselves Black Lives Matter East Lyme. Who are they? Really? I don't know. I couldn't really tell. They say they have a 400-person Facebook group. They stated some statistics, and they made some committees. I don't really think that gives them the right to control my daughter's education. So they may say that they're here for good, and that's great. I support that. But what I heard was speech codes, anonymous reporting, re-education classes, forced confessions of racism, and some other concerning ideas. It's great to have a diverse population. It's great to hire a diverse population. Just hiring on race is, that's problematic. I totally support having a very diverse group of teachers and educators, not just color, but also ideas. So I really object to this insertion of an unvetted group into my daughter's school. One thing that was particularly concerning was the zero tolerance policy proposal for speech. These have unintended consequences. They give power to bullies, they stifle communication, they create an oppression of the very discussion that growing, learning children need to have. They're kids. They're going to make mistakes. These mistakes, from what was stated in the list of examples, those are kids. All right. We have freedom of speech. No one can legislate freedom from speech. So that's kind of what I was trying to get. I think that there should be new teaching, new education, maybe around tolerance. That tolerance is described as recognizing and respecting others' beliefs and practices without sharing them. I think that everyone should learn to treat others decently, with respect, no matter what they think. I'm trying to say that, you know, kindness and civility to all people. Meanwhile, having the liberty to figure out and discuss things without being oppressed by a school policy. So that was very concerning. So I think that freedom is fragile. I don't want to be handing this over to a Facebook group. I would like to be informed if there is a meeting that the Black Lives Matter East Lyme attends. I think that other voices need to be heard, even if they're in agreement. But more of the community needs to be involved. So they may say that they're not like this, they don't mean harm. We don't really know that much about them. At least I don't. And I'm going to leave you with a quote from Maya Angelou. Said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them first time." That's why it's important to stop expecting them to be something other than what they are. They raised a lot of very concerning policy ideas, practices that I have to voice my objections to. So that's it. I'm happy to discuss any of this at another time. And again, this is Elizabeth Mondello. So thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you very much. Before we go to Rich, I think that I should go into this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You can turn that on.
Yeah.
We can mute that.
Jackie, if you can hear me, and there's another guest, Esteban.
Yes, I can hear you, Candace.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay.
Yep.
Esteban, can you hear me? Just give me a thumbs up if you can. Okay, you're next. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Esteban Garcia and I live at 10 Winston Road in East Lyme. I am the parent of a incoming first grader into Flanders Elementary. And I just wanted to speak a little bit about, talking to a lot of parents the last few weeks, and we have very worried and disappointed at the way that the communications and the way that the hybrid plan has been rolled out uh, to the parents, especially at the elementary level and middle school level. We're 2 weeks away from school starting on August 31st, and we don't know which days our kids are going to be in school, which makes it very difficult for childcare purposes. And with the news today that before and after care program won't be running, it's going to put a lot of strain in a lot of families. I know the board always talks about equity, and there's a lot of families that are going to be scrambling for daycare. I don't know if you were aware, but one of the daycare facilities in town, Balestrini's, is not opening just yet. A lot of kids go there for before, for going in the bus and whatnot. And it's going to be difficult for a lot of parents that were hoping to have either care before care at that facility or at the schools. And there's wait lists in other uh, daycares in town, so that's going to be difficult for a lot of parents. um, Additionally, I know that we want to keep the comment short. I am part of the East Lines for Black Matter group. So I would like to, I know that I'm addressing the board, but I would like to invite the person that spoke earlier to reach out to us. We're a group, we're not associated with the national organization. We're a group of East Lyme residents, parents, students, that, we're want to see a more diverse and equitable school system. So we're happy to talk about that. And that's all the comments that I have for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Esteban. Thank you, everyone. The next is our consent agenda, which we do not have on, so we can right into the approval of minutes for August 17th. Everybody's had a chance to review them. And it's like a motion. I would like to call to make a motion to approve the minutes for July 28th hearing. Thank you, Jamie, for a second. Think that would leave. Right. Yes, I will try to be as loud as I possibly can. I'm trying. If anybody would like to have a discussion on it, or if anybody sees there's need for change on it, or no, hands raising. All right. All in favor? Anyone feel what I did? Feel that? Thank you. Anybody abstain? No. Thank you. And then we'll move to approve, looking to recommend minutes from August 6th, 2020. Special motion to approve the minutes from the August 6th special meeting. Thank you, Jamie. Can I get a second?
Second.
Eric. I got the last one. That was Eric. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Anyone not in favor? Please say aye. Or any abstentions? Thank you. Passes. Appreciate that. And Jackie, we are at the special reports for selectmen, and I don't know who will be seeing us tonight. Probably
All day.
Mr. Dave. Hi, Paul. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Very good. Not a whole lot to report. Public safety building has been pretty consuming for the Board of Selectmen. We have done some year-end budget transfers. We do have a special meeting this coming Wednesday evening to further discuss the public safety building and a potential path forward. And I'm going to keep it short tonight because I know you have a full slate, and I know you have your own challenges with the opening school in a couple weeks. So best of luck to you, and I'll sit and listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. Does anybody have any questions for Paul? I don't see anybody having questions, so thank you so much, Paul.
You're welcome.
All right. We'll move on into the discussion items, finance, facilities, and community. And there, or no, it's not. It's Mr. Lund. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. So there was some energy consultants who Mr. Lund spoke to FFO about. And so Eric is here part of FFO, and Jill is here part of FFO. Jody Trinkle and Roy Dellinger are members of the Efficient Light Consultants Company, which has a contract with Eversource to assist the Eversource customers with energy efficiency projects. Part of the reason they do this is that in everybody's bill, we pay a portion of our proceeds to energy efficiency. The reason the utilities do this is because at any given time, and I think everybody's heard recently about transmission charges and whatnot, they have to buy power from other companies and transmit it across the utility lines to the area. So it's to their benefit to not have to buy a lot of outside power, or to minimize the amount of outside power that they buy. So they look at ways in local communities to spread those dollars around to help us improve our efficiency. When we were initially putting together the capital improvement plan, one of the projects that I put in there was just a little seed money for energy efficiency lighting. And just coincidentally, at about the same time I was doing that, Roy came by, just looking for some work. We sat down, and I've done a lot of energy efficiency when I was in the Coast Guard. I was on the national team. We went from facility to facility doing analyses and whatnot. So familiar with these projects, I thought it was a great opportunity because it basically costs us nothing out of pocket. It's one of those that sounds too good to be true, but it actually is really good, and it's not too good to be true. So I'm going to turn it over to Roy and Jody and let them fill you in on the details.
You went away there, Chris, a little bit. Wonderful. How are you guys?
Good, how are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you. I hope everyone's staying healthy out there, and thank you for affording us this time. I know you guys are going to be very busy tonight. So as I go through this presentation, I'm going to share the screen really quick. I'm going to really broad stroke it. Like Chris said, it's really straightforward. The energy efficiency program is there for municipalities, school systems like yourself to take advantage of. It's your money. You should get it back anyway. And just like Chris said, as we continue to use up energy, nobody wants a power plant in their backyard. So really, it's reduce over here to put some power over there. And the bigger picture really is energy as far as coal and oil to spin turbines. If you can burn a 4-watt LED over a 100-watt incandescent, that certainly is better to do, obviously. So I'm going to bring this screen up here. And if you just give me a second. And I'm using my wife's computer, so I'm certainly not Sarah. And she can help me with it here. Okay. Can everyone see that?
No, I don't think so. Hold on.
The host needs to give you authorization to put something up.
That is correct. The host has to go into your settings, and it'll say, allow me to share my screen.
I can do it for you if you want. Want me to share it? It's not coming up, Jody. I have it up.
You do have it up? Yeah, if you can jump it up on the screen. And there we go.
Okay.
Everybody can see that. And I'll just tell you, Jeff, when to scroll down a little bit. As Chris touched on, we're a true ESCO. We work directly with Eversource. We're contracted out by Eversource to implement these programs. A lot of times people will ask why Eversource does that, and it's this simple. We have $138 million to spend on Connecticut towns this year, and every single dime of that has to be spent. So Eversource themselves, you guys will be very happy to know that they don't get to keep a dime of it. So to stop them from having to support the costs of electricians and people to turn the wrenches, they third party that out. And that's why we're in there with you. But it is a true ESCO. So there's only 18 of us in the state, and it's prescriptive across all 18 vendors. So if you called Eversource and said, hey, come put in LEDs in the school system, you're going to get one of their vendors. You're going to get prescriptive pricing through Eversource, and they make it very easy. Like Chris said, it's really a layup of a project. It's cash flow neutral, doesn't cost you anything at all. So go ahead, because I don't want to use up too much of your time. We'll go to the next one here, Jeff. I just want to touch on this. I know this is trying times for everybody, and you guys are really pressed to the wall in trying to get scheduling and everything. We found that every school system in the state right now is actually taking this time to take advantage of the kids not being in school. And we're incredibly busy in installations, but we want you guys to know that when we do go into the school, everything is COVID addressed from the very beginning. So when the equipment, when it gets shipped from Eversource to our warehouse, it is actually all wiped down. When our electricians have all been tested, they go out in groups. They start at one end of the school and go to the other. And as they're doing that, they wipe down everything and cleanse behind them, from the boxes that the fixtures are taken out of down to the door handles. So once a room is converted over to LED, it is sanitized, clean, and moved on. So we can go to the next one. So what I did is, when I met with Jeff and Chris originally, we put this kind of in a bulk presentation. But for the presentation today, I did this small PowerPoint for you guys just to kind of let it roll a little bit better. The one thing that is the really good news right now is Eversource closed down for January, February, or I'm sorry, March, April, May, during the height of the COVID. They completely shut the program down. So that means that they have an overabundance of cash. The good news to that is that they are going to be giving bonus money to the school systems to help these projects along. The bad news is that all these projects are ultimately managed out of Washington, D.C. and the DPUC, the Department of Energy, and they have put a restriction on the disbursement of cash when the project gets installed. So the rebates will be reviewed October 1st, and the installations have to happen by December 1st to have all these numbers fall in place. Since we had met 6 weeks ago with Jeff and Chris, all the components of that are already in place for you guys if you decide to move forward. So meeting these timelines are not going to be an issue. This is the Board of Education building. I know Chris has done a lot of work there already. And these are how the numbers come down. The other thing, and Chris can go into more detail with it, and Jeff, you can too, is Eversource right now is restricting the amount of hours that can be used for run times. What that translates into is less savings than you're actually really going to get. Their hours are prescriptive, and that's why I put the hours in this presentation. So if you have, if you're saving 10 cents over 10 hours, that's just $1. But if you actually are running that room for 30 hours, that's actually $3. And so these numbers are a little bit skewed to show less savings, but you're actually going to have more in the long run. And certainly, Jeff, I entice you to call other school systems, because they'll all say, yes, sure enough, we saw about 30 to 40% more savings than Eversource showed on the paperwork. So a quick rundown here of this project is, we're going to be taking, if we start right up here in the right-hand corner, 23,000 kilowatts off the grid. That's really the only thing that Eversource cares about, is pooling that number across the state so they can meet their federal guidelines. And what that translates into for East Lyme is about $4,300 in savings. And that's the figure that is actually low. I would have to venture to guess that that figure will be more in the $5,000 to $5,500 range, but for argument's sake, we'll keep it at 43. It makes the true payback on the project a 3-year, 8-month payback, when in reality, it's probably going to be more like a 2.5-year. And again, the pricing is prescriptive. So it's a $25,000 project. The state is going to pay almost half of it right up front. They pay $9,334 right on day one. Leaves a balance of $16,400. The town, the school system, Board of Ed, does not pull not a red nickel out of their pocket. You do not need to pay that. Eversource gives every municipality in the state of Connecticut $1 million to spend on energy conservation projects, interest-free. So it's right on your electric bill. So if you decide to move forward with this project, what will happen is after the installation, the next month, you'll see that drop on your electric bill somewhere in the neighborhood for the Board of Education building, 350, 400, even 400 and a quarter, depending on how long those lights are going to run. And then Eversource will put the payment back in of 342. So if I handed you $20 in the morning and asked you $20 at lunchtime, for $20 at lunchtime, it's not going to cost you anything. It counts right down on the bill. So in this case, it'd say 1 of 48, 2 of 48, 3 of 48, energized Connecticut program. Once you hit 48, it drops off, and you guys obviously realize all of the savings. The hours that are underneath it, these are the hours that are prescriptive by Eversource. If you were to say, for example, the boys and girls restrooms are on 24/7 for 5,400 hours a year, they still would not accept that, even if you sent them a letter that was notarized. This is what they do, period, end of story. And that's what's going to drive these savings higher. Everything that is going to be installed in the school systems are going to be absolute brand new fixtures. They're going to be RABs right out of the box, 10-year bumper to bumper warranty on them. So if anything goes tick, tick, boom, you just put in a service call and a tech comes out and replaces the fixture. For those of you that are familiar with everything that Chris hung, same type of fixture, GLL flat panel. Eversource will not let any fixture go into any building that they participate in these programs unless it's on the DLC list. Both of those manufacturers are great. RAB is made right in New Jersey, and most of the outdoor lighting will all be RAB and all brand new fixtures. So this slide, Jeff, was a little elongated because I went ahead and explained the concept, but now we can just run through the rest of them probably pretty quickly. So the next is the high school. Okay, the high school is 282,000 kilowatts coming off the grid, and that's going to translate into $52,000 or better in annual savings for East Lyme. The ROI is about 6 years on the project. $432,000 project, 112 coming back from Eversource on day one, 319. And here's where I want to again address the savings opposed to the payment. The monthly savings is showing at $4,300, and the monthly payment, even at 0%, is $6,600. Now, that is because that monthly savings should be a lot more than the 4,300, but as you can see underneath here, the hours again are prescriptive. The kitchen, the dining, the storage, the auditorium, the cafeteria, they're calling those between 16 and 1,800 hours a year. And you can read library area 2,000 hours a year. It's not accurate. It's probably in your situation 30 to 40% more. And I do believe that Roy has those numbers if we wanted to go over them, because we have the actual run numbers for you. The other thing is the 0% on-bill financing is capped at 48 months through Eversource. So if you wanted to absolutely make sure that it was going to be cash flow neutral and or positive, you can go out 60 months. What Eversource does in that case is they go 3.9 or 2.9, depending on what the dollar volume is, and then they take that rate and blend it into the entire 60 months. Every school that we've done in the state has always just gone with the 48, the 0%. It's the best thing to do because those savings will really match up with your payment. And again, that'll keep the whole thing cash flow neutral. The entire school goes to flat panel LEDs. The other thing that I do want to touch on is when we put LEDs in manufacturing facilities or school systems, we found that kids, believe it or not, learn a little bit better. LEDs emulate sunlight more than a fluorescent tube, which is great, and it stops from the head down on the desk or people kind of dragging a little bit. It perks you up a little bit because it creates that more white, bright environment. So all the classrooms will be all flat panel LEDs, and these are dimmable fixtures. So if you have a media room or something that needs a lot less light, but not the lights being off, that'll all be addressed on the pre-walk, and that'll be wired correctly so you can have a dimmer right on the wall and bring that all the way down to 10% of the lighting capacity. And that's for the high school. Well, that'll be for any one of the buildings. The middle school, very similar, obviously. 233,000 kilowatts coming off the grid, $45,000 in estimated cost savings for the town and the school system. The project cost $290. Eversource is throwing $93,000 at it on day one, $196. Again, in this particular scenario, I would say that you're going to be cash flow positive on this school because these numbers already are so close. So your monthly savings is 3781, and the on-bill payment at 48 months would be 41. And again, you can see the hours that are underneath there. They're skewed, they're not correct. And then the same all flat panel LEDs going into the middle school. So we can move on with that. This is the collaborative summary of the entire project. It really makes the numbers easy to understand. It has everything combined. So if you just go across the total project at the bottom, the total project is 748, 215 coming from the state on day one. 533 would be the 0% on-bill financing through the Eversource. And it gives you $101,000 of savings on paper. At 40%, that's going to be more like $140,000. So it's going to take 538,000 kilowatts off the grid. The monthly savings is going to be 8,400, which is just quite simply this 101 divided by 12. And again, I need to say it for the millionth time. That monthly savings will really line up with that monthly payment of 11. So those are the way the numbers crumble on there. And then the chart on the bottom kind of shows even if the numbers were accurate and those were the hours that you were running the school. So you're going to go into a little bit of deficit for the first 5 years. And then on year 6, you're pulling out into the green. And on year 15, you have $500,000 to your bottom line. The wonderful thing about that is you're bringing every school up into 2020 technology, and it's a 10-year warranty on everything. So the maintenance cost goes away. I spoke to Chris briefly about that this morning. I don't know what that maintenance cost is that you guys are spending on a yearly basis, but that's another derivative of the project. If it's, and I'm just going to make a number up, if it's $25,000, that's another $250,000 dropping to your bottom line, because over 10 years, that's $25,000 that you're not going to spend. So we can go to the next one. This just outlines the warranty. The warranty is a full 10 years. Jeff and Chris, I know we discussed this a couple weeks ago. It's as simple as if anything goes tick, tick, boom in any one of the buildings, you just actually email service at ELC. Tech comes out, replaces it with a brand new fixture. For the first 10 years, we don't fix anything. We put in a brand new fixture right out of the box, and everything that comes out of the school is going to be recycled, and you will get a certificate in case OSHA ever walks in and says, what'd you do with 12,000 fluorescent bolts? You'll be able to say they were disposed of correctly. So we can go to the next. We already have it scheduled for you, so that way it'll fit into the timeline. What we would do is just roll right into the high school first and knock out the 2 biggest schools. If we get into a time crunch, we can put 1 crew on the school, we can put 10 crews on the school. So we're looking at October 5th to the 23rd, the high school, the 26th to the 11th, and then the 9th to the 12th, when we'd run these simultaneously, the middle school and the Board of Education. So really the way this whole project works in a nutshell is if you decide to move forward with this, Eversource themselves will send out an engineer. There'll be a pre-inspection of everything. They will send you a letter of agreement. So you will get an official letter from Eversource saying, we're very happy that you're going to participate in this program. We are committing to $200,000, or you'd have to go back to see, but we are committing to this money for that. And once you sign that LOA and you send it back to Eversource, that money actually gets earmarked for East Lyme and put aside. So even if the Energize Connecticut Fund were to run out of money, it is still there for you. That is actually put aside in a separate account. Once all that happens, we are going to have a project manager come out and walk the school one more time, the school and all the buildings with Chris one more time. And that's quite simply to go, we put a shelf here, can we move this fixture over 10 feet? We don't like when people walk in the parking lot here because this area needs more light. How do we address that? So that way we can handle those issues during the transition of going from fluorescent lighting over to LEDs. And then once the scope of work is put together, the project kicks off, runs, completion, Eversource comes out, does a post inspection, everybody shakes hands and goes their separate ways. 30 days later, you will see all the drops on the electric bill. 30 days after that, they will start processing the payment, and you'll see that payment on your bill. I've been doing this 15 years. I've never seen them not line up. This is just a little bit of stuff that I've already touched on. If you need to do service, you just literally go ahead and just send an email to service@ELC. It's a 24/7, 365. And certainly Jeff and Chris, you have my cell. You call me 24/7 myself, and I will address anything that needs to be done. This is some references, just a couple of school systems and larger facilities that we've done. And this is on the bottom here, the additional information. This is actually the team that is assigned to East Line. So you can read each individual, what their role is and how they interject or dovetail into the East Line project. And that's really about it in a nutshell. I tried to do it as fast as possible because I know you guys are going to be very busy tonight. And that is, I believe, the end.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure.
I know this isn't the most opportune time to kind of be discussing this, but the timeline is pretty tight, and that's why, Chris said we got it to FFO, and it's some pretty big savings over time. If there's any questions, or I think just to point one thing out, the work that will be done in those timeframes are after hours, of course.
Yes. Our crews run 24/7, so Chris will absolutely say what work can be done at what times, and we can do any type of scheduling, weekends, nights, it doesn't matter.
Just to be clear, this is just, the elementaries are done. It's just the high school, middle school, and the central office building.
I think it sounds fantastic. I don't see why we wouldn't proceed. How does everybody and everybody kind of, go ahead.
How am I supposed to talk?
Just talk to us loud and we can hear you.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, not good. Okay. So thanks. And we did review this at FFO, and it, financially it makes a whole bunch of sense, and it's gonna, I think you called it a no-brainer. I would be, so I think it makes a lot of sense. I would be interested, and maybe not with this whole group, but I was looking at the payback periods for the high school, middle school, and the Board of Ed building. And I didn't really understand why they were so different. 6 years, 4 years, 3 years, something like that. The number of fixtures at the middle school and the high school were similar. I know that, but the cost for the Board of Ed is tiny compared to the others. I was trying to figure out how to get there. I don't know that everybody wants to hear that conversation, so we can bring it to FFO. But I would be interested to understand that piece of it.
It depends on how many of those fixtures are going to new fixtures. In some cases, you're not going to have a new fixture. So if you have a strip fixture or a basket fixture running in a hallway that isn't in a 2x4 drop ceiling, then that fixture obviously is a retrofitted fixture. And I think some of that is actually listed out on the actual presentation that I just put up. But also Jeff and Chris have the actual schematic of the school and the line by line assessment. So it also has to do with run times. So if you have a school or something that runs more or less, the way that Eversource justifies these savings, because a lot of people will say, well, how do you know what my electric bill is the easiest way to do this is just if you had a rabbit in the garage and you had a 100-watt incandescent over that rabbit, and this is a bad time for me to use this example since Eversource just threw their rates through the ceiling. But if you have a 100-watt light bulb burning 10 hours a day at 10 cents a kilowatt, it gives you that last derivative of your bill. Change any one of the first three, and that last one will change. So when you take that piece of pie out of any individual school, it really depends on the percentage of the savings for each individual light. So if you have something that has more lights that are dropping into the 70, 80, 90% range, that is going to shorten your payback time. If you have more fixtures that are dropping into the 40 to 60% range, obviously that'll elongate your payback time. And that is also the same type of scenario that'll happen in areas. So, for example, Bristol uses an aquatic center, and they leave the lights on 24/7. Not only does the school use it, but at night it's open to the public. And then by the time the public get out of there, they clean it overnight, and they have metal halides in there, so they were leaving them on 24/7. But the state mandates that you can only show 1,800 hours when it's really like 8,000 hours. So what'll happen there is that savings is skewed and doesn't show correctly in the numbers. And I think you have the same kind of float in the schools. So some areas in the high school may be allowed to run more hours by Eversource's standards than in the middle school, and vice versa. And also the fixture is going to be different. Also, if it's a retrofit fixture or a strip fixture or a wrap, opposed to a 2x4 fixture that's in a drop ceiling that'll go to a new fixture. And also what's coming out too, because you gotta remember, if you have a 4-lamp T8 that's coming out, okay, you're talking about taking out 120 watts plus the ballast factor and putting in a 40-watt LED. But if there's a 3-lamp T8 there, then you're only taking out 90 watts and putting in 40. So that'll change the percentage of the savings.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I still have some FFO, maybe with FFO, we can approve it here, no problem, but I would be interested in some of the math at
Maybe,
FFO.
yeah, maybe if we did an approval based on the final conversation.
Yeah.
We can approve, no, I'm actually
You're okay?
okay approving it. I
Okay.
just want to make sure we understand the length of time things are gonna take.
Sure.
Make sure we're aligned on that, but I don't think it changes our decision at all. I'm fully supportive of doing this.
Okay.
Yeah. And also, I have no problem, Jeff, coming back out and sitting with whoever, and we can really knock out these numbers back in the room that you and I met in.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
No
Yeah,
problem.
and we can go line by line. I mean, every single one.
That's fine.
Thank you, Brian. Now, are you looking for a consensus to move forward, or are you looking for a motion? Yes. Oh, Mr. Daigle, I'm very sorry, I can't see that.
That's quite all right.
Ask your question, Brian.
The life expectancy of the bulbs,
Well, they're not bulbs. Actually, the LED fixtures go by a driver, and then they illuminate. I'm going to be very ginger in saying this. They call them 100,000 hours, which is about 35 years. But I'm also going to say, how did you get there? Because they haven't been around for 35 years. So, you know, I'm sure the manufacturers have some sort of algorithm that they can figure that out. But you know, we've been installing LEDs religiously for the past 6 years, and our service calls on LEDs are almost non-existent. An LED illuminates much differently than a traditional fixture that has a ballast and a bulb where they're sending an electrical frequency through the bulb to illuminate the gases. So usually if we see a failure in an LED, it's because of a factory mishap or something that just isn't right with the fixture, and it's going to go out in the first 2 weeks. But on the box, you know, they're saying 100,000 hours.
okay? And have you seen a decrease in saving during the summer months when the schools aren't as occupied? The numbers you show, you know, what the savings with, which is clearly stated is understated because based on the limit of hours.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh, my pleasure.
Jessica is the attorney for the board through Shipman and Goodman. So everybody out there knows, and Jessica helped us at the policy committee meeting recently with information around equity and diversity. And the policy committee felt, and Jamie, I don't want to steal your thunder, but I know the policy committee felt as if it'd be good to have Jessica come and talk to the full board about what was discussed at that meeting. And we were able to have some members of the Black Lives Matter group part of that too, to listen in. So we wanted to kind of do a little bit of a repeat as to what went on there, so the full board hears, you know, what we had discussed. We only have a half an hour.
Okay,
So
you're fine.
is it okay if we just wait and let Jessica?
Whatever.
Okay, all right. So Jessica's got another call. She's got to
Thanks so much.
5 minutes. All right, so Jessica, why don't we turn it over to you on some of the components that we talked about, the policy?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I think that where we left it and what we're hoping that the board, I think, will approve tonight is doing a comprehensive audit of many existing policies that you already have. You know, obviously you understand that as a Board of Education, you have legal obligations under the law, where of course you have to prohibit against any protected class discrimination. So we already have those obligations that we take very, very seriously, but we can always do better and we can always have a more informed conversation. And so one of the first things that I think we should do, which some other districts are doing, is they're looking at the policies that they currently have, and they're looking to do an audit and a comprehensive review of those policies. So some of the policies that we looked at the policy committee were the minority recruitment policy, the non-discrimination policies, and some of our, you know, anti-bullying policies. And then we also said that it might be helpful if we came up with an overall policy on equity. And so I am working with my colleagues right now as we speak to start taking, you know, doing that comprehensive audit of your existing policies, and then see if there's another thing just to recommit ourselves to these values and these principles that you as East Lyme schools embody. And so that's kind of the thought, given the, you know, conversation across the country, that it's more important than ever now to really take on this task. You know, in addition, one other thing that we talked about was significant training. And so we're also looking to, and I know that we raised this at the policy committee, was to have training across all disciplines of staff. So including our Board of Education members, whether it be sensitivity and diversity training or implicit bias training. And I did also connect the superintendent of schools with someone who did very similar training actually for our own firm here at Shipman and Goodwin, and she's excellent. And I know that she would be thrilled to work with the East Lyme Public Schools if given that chance.
We've since reached out to her, Jolene, or Joelle is her name. So it looks like we've got that scheduled. Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, 9/16, that training is scheduled for.
That's wonderful. She used to be, just so everyone knows, she's a consultant now. She started her own consulting group, but she used to be the diversity and the chief officer for diversity and inclusion and equity efforts at the University of Connecticut. So her experience in this is wide ranging. She's phenomenal.
Does anybody have any questions for Jessica at all? Lee, do you have one yet? Or no?
Yes.
I just, when I read over the policies, are they something that you have written, Jessica, and then you just gave to us, or I just couldn't quite figure out? Are these, does she normally write our policies and then we, especially if we don't have original ones, then we take it and adopt it?
We use Shipman as the firm that writes all of the policies that we utilize. The policy committee receives those, reviews those, and then we go through the process.
Okay, that's what I thought, but for some reason it struck me different this time.
And we just did it after we pulled bus policy. You're literally pulled bus policy.
Yeah.
You reinforce that. It went to Shipman and Goodwin
So
first.
basically, they keep seeing all of our policies.
Exactly. That's
Okay.
that way. There's a connection.
I didn't realize everything you did was going through them.
Yes, everything is going through shipment now for all of our policy reviews and updates.
So the board just make a decision on policies without going through that.
We get theirs. Yeah, they send us their model policies, and then that's what the subcommittee, the policy subcommittee looks at, reviews, and adopts.
Thank you for that explanation.
Do you mind if I just add something on? So Jessica, if you could just correct me if I'm wrong, and can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. All right, so the normal process is policies will come to you, and then it comes back to our policy committee, and that's where the East Line Board of Ed kind of hones in and kind of puts our expectations, right, as a board, kind of in there to intertwine.
Yeah, so I mean, different boards do it different ways. So I think you are relatively new subscribers to our model policies. And so some of the policies that I talked about don't actually have all of our language that we would recommend, because I'm not sure whether you've had time to go through everything. And so that's why I think some of them do need some further revisions to make sure that we're in compliance with all recent, regulatory and legislative changes. But yes, so some boards will adopt our policies in a full comprehensive sweep, and other districts who, really enjoy the policy work will do it exactly how you explained it, to say that, Shipman and Goodwin will provide sort of a template, and we'll work off of that template, and then we'll go through our regular policy formulation and procedures, and then adopt accordingly, but we'll put our own spin to make sure that we're tailoring it to the needs of East Lyme.
I got it. Okay. I'm going to go to Lee because you have the next question.
I think it'll be a quick hit. I'm just curious what the timeline will be for us to take action.
Right, so I think we were waiting, I think we wanted the full approval of the board this evening. I know it's a recommendation of your policy committee, but I know that the policy committee felt strongly that they wanted the full support of the board in order to engage this process. I did, with the authority of your superintendent, already start some of the auditing, so I can't imagine it's going to take much longer than a few weeks.
Yeah, we wanted to come back together after 3 weeks from the actual policy committee meeting. So I believe there's about 2 weeks left before we come back.
Right.
And go ahead.
So I don't know if anybody read the minutes from the policy meeting, but as a committee, we felt that the board should be making this decision, that the policy committee would make the recommendation to the board on what we thought would be best. And basically what we talked about was doing it right, not just doing it to do it. We want to make sure the motions that we are doing mean something, and that we're not just enacting policy and change and not being behind it when we do it, that we want it to come from us down, and that we should be involved in it too. And that it should be a full board decision on what we enact and not just the policy, and that we should be paid.
Okay. Thank you, Jamie. I just want to say that I did listen in on the policy committee meeting, and I am in full support of the audit. That way we're having common language throughout it, but I do appreciate the fact that we can personalize those policies to what our expectations, what we have for our district. And not just with those, we did the same thing with other ones.
We've done that with all of our policies.
Pretty much all.
And kind of tailor it to East Lyme.
I also like the conversation that you guys had about the task force and the training and, the board of ed training. I mean, I have different diversity trainings every year, but I don't know how many other board members actually participate in that. I think that's a good thing on top of all the other trainings that can participate in. Does anybody else have any questions for Jessica? Eric has a question for you.
I think it's for you, but it could also be for policy committee. So we have a policy on minority recruitment for
Yes.
teachers and administration. So it's all, okay, so,
Very old.
so is it that, because we obviously looking at the numbers of what we haven't recruited proportionally on what you think. So is it that our policy is not right, or is there a process not, are we fixed? My concern is you fix a policy, but you don't fix a process. I know they should, in theory, go hand in hand, but they don't always. And you could have a good policy and still not follow a process that results in what you want. So I don't know who to ask this to, but how do those two work together? How does our policy and revising that also change our processes?
Well, so one, I think that the revision of the policies, one, certainly show your commitment, given the nature of the times right now, right? We're in an unprecedented time. So it shows commitment, it shows purpose. But the other thing I would say is, of course, it's not just we're going to change a policy, but we also need greater accountability. So I think when we start the audit of the policies, what we're looking to do is have a more comprehensive review of these policies in light of everything that's going on. And then we really need to implement training, and we need to hold people accountable at all levels, starting from the board and working from the top down. So I agree with you, Eric, a policy is not going to be enough, but I think that's why we were pretty excited about the idea of having a task force, because I think part of the task force and then part of your work with Joelle, one thing that Joelle will really do too is audit how you function as a school district and also give you accountability metrics that you can implement. So I agree, the policy is just one part of a very important piece.
Thank you.
Well, my thought about the whole idea of policy and practice is that it's kind of like a nonprofit working with the mission statement, and you always look back at your mission statement. Are we following the mission of the organization? I think the same thing is true with the policy statement, with the practices that are going on within an organization. So you look at that and you decide, is this in line? Are we following? Do we need to readjust what we're doing, how we're doing it? And it kind of gives us a step and a pathway to move forward. That helps.
Yeah, well said, Dave.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions for Jessica while she's there? Do you have any questions? No? Anybody else?
We have a few minutes. So the task force and the audit, I should say, of the policies is underway. So we'll bring that back to the policy committee meeting in 3-week turnaround.
The last policy meeting, so.
Exactly. While Jessica's here, I don't know if there's any questions. We still have some time on the COVID temporary policies. Did anybody have? I know that was can be a little confusing.
Jessica doesn't have time. I can't explain it.
Either way, you want to have we have her with us?
Yeah, might as well. She's here.
Jessica, would you mind while you're here with our COVID temporary policies, just so it's crystal clear, just our process, do that because we talking to the board. We're not, going through every single individual policy because there's a lot of temporary policies. We're adopting them as a whole set.
Yeah, so I'm happy to. So really what you're doing right now is you're really just adding an addendum to your existing policies for a very limited specific purpose. And so what we did at Shipman and Goodwin was we put together what we're calling a COVID-19 temporary policy packet. And so what we did is we went through your existing policies and we determined that there were some places, given the recent legislative, regulatory, and also government executive orders, where it is necessary that we have some revisions in place. It is necessary that we update our policies for this very limited and specific purpose. So what we're not doing is replacing our policies. So for instance, in our student discipline piece, which I believe is something that you are looking to approve tonight as part of the policy?
Yep.
Okay. So one of the changes we made there was, unless there's a medical reason for not wearing a mask, if a child repeatedly refuses to wear a mask, there could potentially be disciplinary consequences. That doesn't replace our entire student discipline policy. It just adds that one component that's very specific to the COVID health crisis. So when you're adopting this, you're adopting these policies based on the assumption that it's for limited purpose and that they will be null and void once the COVID-19 health crisis is over. So again, it's really just an addendum. The way that we talked about how we would catalog the policies is that, let's say, you know, in that example, that would be in the 5,000 series, and it would just go behind the relevant student discipline policy, and it would have a little tab on it that says, you know, COVID-19, so that everyone knows that it's just for that limited purpose.
Does anybody have any questions for Jeff on that? Thank you, Jessica. Thank you so much, Jessica Ritter.
Oh, my pleasure.
Appreciate your time. Oh, Eric and
No,
everybody say.
Oh, sure. Eric has a question? Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Mariana,
Wait, he does or he doesn't have a question?
No, I was waiting.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Take care.
All right. So now with that pause, I'd like to go back. Yeah, I'd like to go back to number 5B, so that we can finish that out, and we're about to have discussion on COVID-19 district expenses, cost projections, and grant funding availability.
Yeah, so this was brought to FFO for discussion because we are starting to look and really kind of hone in on current expenditures and costs that have happened that are related to COVID, as well as projected costs that are related to COVID, and trying to quantify a number between the two. So Mariana is working with the departments and directors on pulling that information together. She shared that out with FFO, and the sheet in front of you kind of breaks that down. Now the number at the end is pretty high, you know, as you can see. You know, you're talking upwards of almost $1.5 million in projected costs. Now we are receiving $171,000 in CARES Act funding, roughly. 171?
171,660.
All right, I forgot the 660. 171,660 in CARES Act funding. And then we are waiting for the governor's release of additional state funding. We thought it was going to happen Friday, but town by town is going to get some additional grant funding. We still have not received it. So hopefully we'll have that soon. And I have no idea what that amount is going to be. Do you have any indication at all? It was about, was it 20 million across the state? Or?
He had announced 160 million across the state, but how that would be distributed or
Okay,
we could
so
use it for.
160. But so if you're looking at 160 million divided across the state, however that formula is that they're using, we should be getting some money, we just don't know how much. So that would be obviously used to help offset the cost of this, you know, projected, and I want to emphasize projected 1.5 million. But I mean, Mariana's here. We can. I don't know how detailed I was able to make FFO, but I don't know how detailed you got with the document. If you want to run through line by line, you can, or if there's specific questions that you have, we can just respond to them. And you can see the categories that are on the sheet as well that was posted in the board docs.
Well, the money that we are getting, that's confirmed that we are going to get that covered.
171, yes. Yeah. That's confirmed. We still don't know exactly when. Hopefully, maybe we're thinking October, maybe. So we don't know for sure. And we're just waiting for the other amount and what it might be. I have no idea what that amount is. So they're really just hoping to have it for this meeting.
Amy has a question?
Where's the money coming from?
Well, good question. We don't know how much there's going to be in savings, if anything. And I'll give the example of busing. You know, we're planning right now not to use busing on Wednesday, but I don't think we're going to save much or if they're even going to bend on.
I meet with them Wednesday. I have a conference call with First Student on Wednesday to discuss that.
Yeah. We don't know with sports, with stipends with sports yet. There's a lot of we don't know still that are hanging out there in really everything that we're doing. So that's a bit problematic. But it would probably have to be, I would recommend in September, we go to the Board of Finance, and we share this out and walk through it with them. And then at some point along the line, is it time to ask for a special appropriation once we have a more concrete understanding of what we're getting for grant funding that's going to help offset this cost and hone really in on what those, rather than projected, what the actual costs are going to be. we know what we bought already in PPE expenses and masks and face shields and plexiglass. So you can see those numbers, you know, that's something we typically wouldn't do. So that's an added expense onto, and, you know, staffing components, you know, busing monitors in the schools. But, you know, I hate to say it, but if we did go remote, all of that kind of disappears too, because we don't need it anymore. So there's so many different avenues and roads we could end up traveling down for these costs. But I think it's keeping the Board of Finance informed. That's number one, that we go to their meeting in September and fill them in on that. And then we continue to monitor. By that time, we'll know how much we're getting in this other grant. I hope, should. And then we can apply those savings against it.
I don't know, just a suggestion that maybe to invite a rep from the Board of Finance to maybe the FFO or to include that type of thing. It might just be.
Yeah,
just to kind of give a heads up and kind of keep a hold of it and see. I mean, things are changing rapidly. I mean, so.
Yeah.
Just so we lose track of it and that they're in the loop. Would be good, I'm sure.
Yeah, almost maybe two. We're still on their agenda for each meeting, and after FFO, we could go and present with them, but definitely I agree. Having more than a number.
How much of these expenses have you already incurred?
So most of them are estimates. So you can see for the PPE, we've incurred about $30,000 as of the time that I did this. The document cameras, we have encumbered, so we haven't spent, but that's a good dollar now. I tried to put in there the dollar amounts that for technology that we knew, because there's going to be more, and you'll see I have a number at the bottom, unanticipated or pending, which is about.
Right, and I saw the estimates and stuff like that. I just didn't know if we had, maybe if we added the column that says amount
expended to
expended
date
to
versus.
date.
Sure.
Just so we have like, so like a running total of what we've already spent and what we think we're going to spend in addition. Because I think that might help wrap our heads around the numbers.
Sure.
At least my head around the number.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have estimate, and I'll have expended to date, and then balance.
Just because
Yep, no problem.
I don't know how much we've already bought. I don't.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I looked at this the other day and I was.
Yeah, and just to add in, I was just thinking over to Mariana, you know, I also have title grants that are also used for the literacy and math focus, and we haven't, you know, like those come out to me and just open up now. So I might, you know, there could be a conversation in regards to some of that grant funding, but I don't, it's just opening now.
All right. Thank you. I see, Gary, did you have your hand up? Go ahead.
One item that caught my eye was at the bottom of page 1, $109,000 for Wilson language training. I looked those up and compared them to what is available free of charge on the state site through the Ed site, State Department of Education. The materials there seem to be very comparable to those coming out under Wilson. And I just was wondering like why we're paying $109,000 for that when we can get comparable materials free from the State Department of Education. So my suggestion on this is that we might be able to move forward this budget, but maybe just remove that item for the time being, just a discussion on like why the $109,000 we're spending when comparable materials are available to us free of charge.
That's a great question and a great contribution. I'm actually really thankful that you said that. So I can look into that.
Yeah.
It's something that's
We could look into it. Yeah, we just
utilize that and use it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jake.
In the direction of what Mary said, this is like the second or third time he's brought that up, is that there's something comparable on the state website. And again, I will say this, I'm not an educator. This is something we don't look at first, or we feel that there's better quality purchasing outside, or
I don't mean to put anyone on the spot, but I'm sitting here listening and going, oh, this is like the third time we just said this, and.
Right. So assessment wise, we are looking at the state resources.
Okay.
And that varies on bringing these up. So we have brought that into the assessment conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
I would just need confirmation around what he's referencing now as being comparable to Wilson to be able to respond to that. And again, Tim and I are happy to, I'm happy to move this to discussion item and.
Well, let's.
Is it just the stuff that's already in place here, and so we're using it?
No, so we have, it is a multi-sensory structured language literacy based program. And it is one of the pieces of feedback we've received from our parents as well as senior students, that it is a gap that we are probably not addressing with the quality at which we should. So implementing a program across our 3 buildings and really using that program consistently with fidelity would be beneficial to us. But we can talk to you in more depth in regards to that. And obviously I can connect with Barry in regards to making sure I reference the appropriate.
I'd like to say, I'm not trying to call anyone out.
No, it's a good question.
It's a good question. It's a good
I mean,
question.
my simple mind is like.
This should be something we should be bringing back every meeting for an update.
100%.
So, yeah, so maybe at the next meeting, we can kind of talk through that some more. And then also the last page kind of has the grant. I don't know if you saw the last page of it too. It's kind of a grant. Did we put that in, right?
I did. Yep, it's in there. It's the last, the middle page has just all the different available grant fundings, what's eligible, and then just some notes or comments that I made. So, like on the grant that came out, the governor,
Okay. Anybody has any other questions? Erica?
Are we going to discuss at all kind of the reopening of schools, or is
Yes,
this the
we're getting there.
Yeah, that's next.
That's
Oh, I'm sorry, it's after the temporary.
We gotta get there a little bit.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Hang in there.
That's okay. I didn't want to bring it up here. I didn't see it. I was looking
When you
for
get
it.
to the systems out of the way.
It's just no attachment.
You're funny. All right, now, if anybody doesn't have any more questions though on this document, we're gonna move forward and go to 6. No? All right, guys. We're moving on to the discussion concerning the adoption of the proposed temporary policies and regulations related to the COVID-19 health crisis as a result of legislative changes.
I'll take it.
There's a lot,
So I'll take it. So then I'll just say, I am a paper person when it comes to policy. I've embraced everybody's idea that I need to go digital for everything for board. But for policy, I need paper. So before I reached out to Jeff and talked about these policies, I printed them all out. So then I reached out to Jeff, and it was, they're just the temporary COVID language. So I was going through these for us as a board, as I normally do, and marking up things that I don't think our board likes. But then it was explained to me that the language in here that's highlighted is going to be a temporary COVID language, like Jessica said, about wearing masks and PPEs and sanitizers and stuff like that. So it's just temporary language that we're going to approve for the duration of COVID. And we do have a policy bylaw 9311 that allows us during emergencies to make changes without doing the 2 readings to policy. So we can approve these today by enacting one of our Board of Ed bylaws. So we don't have to do 2 readings of all of these policies. Okay. And if anybody would like to read them, they're here. You can borrow them.
They're also online.
They're also online, and they're going to be, like Jessica said, they're going to be their own COVID-19 tab. So it's going to be like policy.
Candace,
I'm sorry.
I'm your eyes behind your.
So it's gonna be, it's
I need all
gonna
the eyes.
Yeah.
so it's gonna be, let me find one of them. So it's gonna say like policy 9000 C19. And then it's gonna be the highlighted portion of what we are just approving basically for the temporary purpose. That was it.
That's the trigger, C19, that will be the highlighted information.
So that's just gonna be temporary during the COVID.
Exactly.
All right, so are you ready for questions? Or?
Yeah, I'll take
All right,
questions.
Jill, go ahead.
Okay, my concern is we don't know when COVID will be over. If anyone can, it will be President of the United States. So what I'm saying is, do we need to make a date on these policies when they will expire?
To make a date because we don't have a date. Because
Okay,
none of us know when it is going to end. So I think Jessica gave us the verbiage.
So what's the trigger to make us go back and remove them?
Well, the verbiage of the motion, I'll do the motion in a minute, but it basically says it's while the COVID health crisis is underway.
So when, I guess it's that's the definition of the COVID health crisis.
Everybody's in the same boat.
Okay, all right, no, I feel like it's too vague, but if we're all feeling good with vague,
At some point, it will trigger that we'll come back and say, we're moving COVID is gone.
It's not going like tomorrow, we're not gonna say, oh, well,
Yeah,
it's over.
probably the start of next year, hopefully, is what I would shoot for.
And Kate, I
Well,
think
just the CDC would declare that it's over.
Yeah, okay, use their guidance, it's a good idea.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
with that, does anyone have any other questions before we ask for a motion? All right, I'll move the motion then.
I would like to make a motion that the board adopt the proposed temporary policies and regulations related to the COVID-19 pandemic as prepared by board counsel Shipman and Goodman. Given the unprecedented nature of the COVID-19 health crisis and the critical need for these temporary policies to ensure the health and safety of our staff and students as we plan for school to reopen, the board further moves to invoke board policy 9311, which allows the Board of Education to adopt policies after the initial presentation to comply with statutory and/or regulatory changes. I don't know if I need to read out all the policies or no.
No.
Okay. Okay. I thought you said no to me too, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 effective policies.
Can I get a second? All in favor, please say aye. In favor? Or abstain? I'm abstaining. You're abstaining, Jim Reedy is abstaining. Motion passes.
Thanks. JV, I know.
That was a lot.
So it's a lot of policy and everything
I was
else.
working my way through the stack too. I was almost done.
Sometimes paper is good.
They've got all sorts of skills.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to C, which is the East Line Public Schools roadmap to reopening of schools for fall 2020.
Okay, I don't even know where to begin here with this, but let's start with the fact that information flood, we've heard from, parents on both ends of the spectrum, through all of this. Hopefully you had an opportunity to see some of the videos, the updates. We did the town hall meetings last week at the high schools first, and then we did the elementary and middle school on Thursday. So hopefully, Jack will send those links out to you so you have a chance to view those. One element in this that we were really working on today is the staffing component. Because you gotta remember, we weren't finalized yet as we started this process, a few weeks back, in understanding and knowing what our responsibility was to those teachers and staff members who were asking, I need to work remotely, I can't come in, I've got a medical condition. So lot of confusion, obviously across the state. We're working with Jessica, on our responsibility with that. So long story short, there is a handful of staff members, probably about 15 teachers. And then there's other non-certified staff as well that are requesting and required by doctor's note to stay home. So without that information, it's very difficult to kind of ascertain, okay, how are we going to virtual biking? How are we going to run that program? Because that's where we had the idea of using Ingenuity to support, because we don't have the teachers. We're faced with either, well, we can't, we're going to have to go remote because we don't have enough staff. We can't hire enough. That's what most districts are facing. Hence, we looked into, Ingenuity to potentially help us with that process. So that's why we had looked into them, and they have certified teachers in it. Long story short, after identifying, all of our certified staff that now can work remote, we can utilize those individuals to support the virtual biking classrooms. So for instance, we can take a kindergarten or first grade or a second grade teacher at the elementary level and say, okay, you need to work remote, and we do have some. You need to work remote, so you are now going to take grade K, and you're going to teach grade K across the 3 schools. So students from virtual biking. Yes, the virtual biking. So you got a lot of moving parts. You got virtual biking, you got hybrid, you've got special education students as well, which we're planning on offering for them to come in potentially 4 days a week because of IEP services. So, yeah. So with the virtual biking piece then, so we can assign teachers to those groups of kids across the schools. So that's at the elementary level. We still have to hire some long-term subs. We still don't have enough to cover all of those K-4 stuff. So we're in the process of doing that. So that's one piece at the elementary. When you look at the middle school, let's stick with virtual biking. And actually, let's give a run of the numbers first, and then I'll go to just so everybody knows what we're talking about for numbers of population. So at the there's a total of about 190. It was 191. Exactly. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
For virtual biking, we're only talking virtual biking here. So 191 children across the entire district. Most of them are at the elementary level. Just give a breakdown of Nyack Center.
Yep, Nyack Center is at 14. Flanders is at 34. Lily B. Haynes is at 43. Middle school is at 69. High school is at 28, and then 2 coastal students.
So that's the breakdown.
And I have about 10 more emails in my inbox in the last 2 hours. And I'm not sure what they say. I'm not sure if it's one way or the other. So changing the air of transparency, I just gave you that number, but I'm watching things come in.
And I know Mr. Esteban, or let me say this, Mr. Esteban brought up, they need another forwarding information. That's supposed to be going out hopefully tonight.
Yeah, after I leave you here,
yeah,
I am going back with Stacy to see where that goes.
Yeah, so we're trying to get that out tonight. It's just all these emails that have come in with parents changing and modifying what they want to do is the code today. You have to go through it manually in the system. So
is there a deadline?
Well,
last Tuesday. Last Tuesday.
Well,
yeah. Well, that was for the first.
Tuesday was for the fall confirmation, and then after parents confirmed the fall confirmation, if they were a no, their kid wasn't coming back to school, they then got an additional communication from me saying, are you homeschooling? Yeah. Meaning you're accepting responsibility for your kid's education and homeschooling them at home? Or are you requiring virtual biking due to a medical condition of yourself, a family member, or whatever it may be? They had that till Friday at noon. We were cold calling about 89 people who hadn't responded by noon on Friday. And so that's been the bulk of our day today. And then we had 176 parents that never responded to the fall commitment survey. So altogether it's 250 parents we were cold calling trying to get a response. So today became the day where they were all coming in. When we had cohorted the A and B group all Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, So now we have to manually do these 250 kiddos. So we didn't want to release a cohort midday today and still be moving kids into cohorts, because the thing we're trying to avoid is you are in cohort A and tomorrow I'm calling you going, I'm so sorry, I'm just kidding, you're in cohort B. So that's what we are trying really hard to avoid, so.
Do we have to start school on the 31st? I mean, is this? I
Okay,
mean, it's not, I mean, I'm sorry.
As of right now,
I mean, I'm just thinking that since this is so, like, uncertain and so, like, sticky and messy, like. It's gotta start, we've gotta draw a line. No, I know we have to draw a line, and I know we have to start, but it's still things are set, a little bit more struggling.
let me just finish kind of giving a few more points, and then we'll open it up to questions. So I may answer some of your questions. So there's where, not knowing how many kids we were going to have. That goes back to us talking about using Ingenuity, using another platform. We need more teachers. So with the numbers where they are, you take the middle school, like you said, with 68, 69 students at the middle school. And we have roughly a small number of teachers that have requested to be out there. So we're working, and there's the other side of this is working with the union too. Because the union has, some requirements. You can't take, union work. So we've been trying to work with them. Had a conversation with Scott Mahan this morning. We're meeting with them on Wednesday. But we want to be able to have our middle school teachers that need to be out. They could actually, this came from unions, actually, might work, is having our middle school teachers Zoom into a classroom potentially, and have the kids in the classroom with a sub that's there every day. But the teacher is still teaching. He is Zooming into the classroom. So that's one idea. And they brought that forward as a proposal, as an idea across the state. The other idea, because the numbers are so low, we're leaning more towards either doing that or saying, we're going to have kids Zoom into classroom, which we can do. I know there's a lot of misperceptions and conversations about Zooming in, Zooming out. But that's another option of something that we potentially can do. Same thing goes at the high school. And you've got kids in AP classes and high-level classes. They can potentially Zoom into those classes and handle it, that way. Small numbers, at the high school compared to the entire school population.
Yeah, just to give you an understanding, the high school, like I have 6 ninth graders.
That's it. Just 6 ninth graders.
That are in virtual Viking. I have 7 11th graders, and I'm now down to 5 seniors. So it's pretty, these are the numbers we get for kids that might have medical procedures. This is, so I think not knowing the numbers we were going to get was really hard to develop a model for teaching them, because you weren't sure, am I going to get 150 kids, or I kept counting 6. Okay, that's a totally different conversation in my book, right? Than 150 that were in my head. So, and that's where we came up with.
Trying to do it. So this way. So that's virtual Viking. Let's stay on that for a minute, so we don't get mixed up.
All right.
Questions about virtual Viking? Yeah.
She's been waiting so
Well, so my main question with virtual Viking is, why did we choose Ingenuity when everybody is saying how terrible it is? Why did we choose something different?
So one of the things that we did was I worked with Learn and Crack to sort of reach out to regional organizations. They listen, we have this mandate that we are supposed to be offering this remote experience. I don't have the capacity right now, technically, and I don't know what my numbers are. So there were several of us that went through, and I have the list here, but we went through several, like Coursera, edX, Teachable, Learn World, Limited. So we went through about 8 different platforms. And one of the things that a couple of us landed on for Ingenuity is that we thought we were going to have 2 problems. What if we got 60 teachers or 40 teachers that said they had medical conditions? What are we going to do? So one of our non-negotiables was we need to have a platform that can provide us with Connecticut certified teachers should we be backed up against the wall, because either we don't have subs or we don't have staff. for kids. And that was a genuine concern. And then the other piece of it is we needed a platform that we could, if we wanted to, only use the platform, take away all their content and put in our own content. And it was the only platform that would allow me to at any time be able to turn around and say, I'm not using your curriculum. I want an Eastline curriculum in here for this kiddo. I want this teacher in here. So it was giving me a little bit more flexibility for it. And they were really transparent. So I was looking for more flexibility because, to be honest with you, when we were looking, I didn't know what we really needed because I didn't know how many staff we were talking about. I didn't know how many students. I was just looking at, we better have a good plan B of somewhere of how we're instructing these kids, and we better have courses available and teachers should we need them. I mean, it was a grim cloud for a while there over us. We really weren't sure what we were going to get. And we never had the intention of, we're going to put you on Ingenuity and we're just going to leave you and step away as if you're not our kid, right? But I think what happened is that a lot of those experiences or those resources and stuff were because it's almost like a virtual high school type setup that we have, and they were just putting kids and assigning them 5 classes and this is what you're doing. And they'll say to you right out of the gate with Ingenuity, that is not the most efficient way to use our platform. You need a teacher, you need ongoing progress monitoring. So I do think there's a piece of it where we committed to, I need to partner with somebody. And then to be honest with you, the other criteria is who can make this live in 4 weeks? Because I need this live in 4-week time period. Because I was really concerned it was going to end up with a bunch of students that were going to be home and I wasn't going to have any means to set them up with anything. So that's really why we ended up
So I
with it.
have a follow-up.
That was a good answer. Thank you.
That helps me a
It's
lot.
what it is. Like
Because I have teacher friends in other states who are like, why did you guys do that? That's the worst program there is. And I'm like, I have no idea why you chose that. But I didn't see that on the list of COVID expenses. Is there not an expense to that?
We are only charged when we assign a kid to it.
Yeah, if we use it, then we get.
So that was the other piece, is there is no upfront cost. So some of the other platforms, I was paying $20,000 right out of the gate just to have their
And that
platform.
was no matter how many kids, if it was 1 kid, 2 kids, 200 kids.
It's, you pay per student.
You pay for what?
Per student, per course.
But, okay, so, but with Ingenuity, that's Ingenuity.
Yes.
The other ones were $20,000, like no matter if you have 1 kid or 500
Correct.
kids. Okay. So I'm assuming once we get a total on that, that will join that COVID-19 price sheet.
If we end up having to even use
You might not
it.
even have to use it.
Right now, we're in a place where we actually, we
The
started
numbers are
sketching
much
out, and we're
better.
like, I don't even know, if we reach agreement with the association, I don't even know if we're using it.
No.
But I want to have the backup. So say a parent's on virtual Viking and we have them zooming in, and a week or 2 later, they go, this isn't working. My kid it's not following up. We try to do a troubleshooting. We try to work with the teacher. We work with the family. We have a conversation. And finally, the parent says, I'm still not comfortable. My husband still has this medical condition. I don't want to send them whatever. At least I know I have a platform choice that I can at least put somebody on for the course, so they're not missing course completion.
And it's our curriculum. It's not the Ingenuity curriculum.
If I have our teacher on it.
Okay.
Yes, if I have our teacher on it. But what we're talking about doing right now, based on what we're seeing for staff members, is like we're talking about running the elementary virtual, like using Seesaw and Zoom, not even using Ingenuity, and then it's almost conditioning them for if we were to go remote, you're using all the same tools. Right. That's what we're talking about right now. And then with the middle and high, we're talking about having them possibly zoom in so they are in the courses that they were enrolled to be in anyway, with the teachers that they were enrolled to be in anyway.
Okay.
So it's Eastline teachers, our people. So that's where we are now that we know.
Now we know the numbers. We've been running, without that
Right.
information.
But they can still change.
Okay.
Or you call on the council.
Can you just hold on one second? You have your hand up.
I apologize.
I know it's hard because I can't see out of my peripherals. Just
Especially to the middle and high piece, for having students zoom in. I guess I'm curious, and I'm not looking into this, but what sort of technology would we need to explore to do that? Because as a teacher, if I'm spending the entire block standing in front of my class where a camera can see me lecturing, like I'm not doing my job. I spend like a very little amount of time in front of the class introducing new material. And the vast majority of time, our teachers are circulating, students are working in small groups. And I'm just curious how that will translate to a student zooming in virtually from their home and being able to actually be engaged in that lesson.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that, I mean, at one point, and again, this could be a COVID class for you, there's a couple different, obviously, tech tools that we can use in which they have the camera spotter around their neck, and then the camera actually tracks the teacher. So the teacher's walking and you can shut it off if you're leaning over to talk to a child, and it's sort of like a squeeze button. We actually today had, I can't remember the name of the group. They came in today to actually set up a dry run classroom so we could actually see what it looks like. But this is one of the reasons why we didn't do the whole, everybody zoom in, was because of something like that. Teachers aren't standing in one place when they're teaching. We are promising parents, individual and small group, that they're going to have these class sizes of 5 or 6 kids. But if they're spending half the time trying to make sure Johnny and Mary and everyone's in, what am I doing now to these students that are in front of them? So really the tracking is really the best. The swivel is one model that we looked at, where again, it's tracking you while the teacher's walking around. So that would have to be, those would be options.
Do you want to ask a question?
So, yeah, so it's trying to look at these options. And, I know I shared with Friday, I mean, we have some great concerns with just, straight zooming into the class for your virtual bike student, doing that for what could be, 30 hours a week or 35 hours a week. This just doesn't make any sense. So how do we work around, those problems? What? Go ahead. And I got one other thing I just want to share.
So, not any really questions, but, and I'm certainly no criticism at all. I mean, I support each and every one of you. I know that this has been just it's been such an unbelievable amount of work and tasking. And once you get a plan, it changes, and planning like right now very well could be changing next time we get home, for gosh sakes. Lots of information, and I want to thank you. I know weeks ago, both myself and Jamie and Lee started to talk about that plan and what we kind of needed to do to communicate with our community members and our parents, and you put things into place, which I thought was great. Big help. But even then, when the plan went through, it was very difficult. People really couldn't understand what the virtual biking was. And even myself, sitting here with all of you and having this plan in front of me, I didn't even have the details. My impression was that the virtual biking was going to be basically this line just streaming into the house. That's what the impression was. So then when we got more details, and I think that there's more to that, because from what I read, we are unable to provide the same experience. We have to offer a different experience for virtual learners per the state of Connecticut.
Temporary, yep.
Right. So there's a lot of different regulations and expectations and guidance from the state of Connecticut that we have to adopt and that we have to implement. So it's really not a choice. It's not like the board members or our administration said, ooh, this is a great idea and we're going to run with it. It's really not. And I think that the more, I know that it's a lot of information and reading and putting things together, but it actually benefits the district and our administration and the rollout of a plan when the communication is there. So the videos that you guys put together, the YouTube, I think that helped a lot. People understand kind of what we were talking about, right? And just the more conversation that you could have, and I know it's asking hundreds and hundreds of emails are coming in, and rightfully so. There are people that just need answers, and honestly, we don't have the answers for some things. And I think that the town halls, Mr. Prebos actually noted it. You know, we just don't have all the answers. We're really kind of learning it as we're going and trying to do the best that we can. But the more communication, the better. Because I think after the fact, you know, if we had done those videos prior for more time, kind of talk about what the virtual biking would be, maybe we would have had so many people so upset and not really having this point. That's all.
Yeah.
And you guys do, you listen. I mean, it's been, and it's hard. It's hard to lead. I spoke to Jeff earlier today about that, right? And we look to leaders to make decisions and move forward. So here we are in the district and we're waiting for the state of Connecticut, right? And we're only given a very little bit. And then it's on us. And we have to move forward with the plan and move forward with a regional hybrid plan that is the smart way. But there's a lot of logistics that go along with it. And I just don't think that the average person understands that. So it takes the effort to pick up the phone call. Lots of questions I've seen about the special ed part to virtual biking and what that's going to look like. And oftentimes it's fueled by fear of the unknown, right? And I think we all can relate with that at some point. And you know, people just trying to, you know, have some fun. That's all. Are we going to have any type of town hall, any type of anything with the virtual biking, so that people, you know, have more of what it's going to look like as we move forward? I would assume that that's what it's going to do.
So the virtual biking parents will get a letter tonight, because they're in virtual biking.
Yeah.
They will get, so just like Group A is gonna get a letter, Group B is gonna get a letter, and virtual biking, they'll get a letter. And then we can follow up that. It's sort of, I'm channeling Jason Dickens today, who in the admin meeting was like, we just have to live this. We have to like beta test it for 2 weeks. And live it.
And we can work through the bugs.
And it's not, you know, it's like
We're just going to have to put it together.
There's no best solution. It's like working with what's the best of the worst is kind of what we're working on, which is very problematic because it doesn't make people happy. But you know, we have an issue, one issue that we're running into with virtual biking, and we can move on and talk about some of the other ones. Is, you know, these kids, if they let's say, as I mentioned before, you've got a kindergarten teacher that is covering, you know, kindergarten kids across the 3 elementary schools. All right, well, what happens if we go fully remote? Or what happens if everything looks good and we come back on site, you know, fully? Now we have to change teachers midstream. Okay, because that kindergarten teacher's got to take his or her class now if we go remote. Because kids are going to, the virtual biking kids are going to be assigned their actual kindergarten teacher if, you know, they were on site. So that's their teacher for the year. But while in virtual biking, this teacher remote over here is working with them. So I mean, that's not the best, but that's, I don't know how any other way to kind of run that. So there's challenges in it, but we got to be clear with parents on situations of that nature. That if you're virtual, you might not have that teacher all year long. You might switch, but that happens with, you know, maternity leaves and such. So.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments on the virtual biking?
Information's going on out of there. Why don't we get some airtime to special ed? Because I know there's some questions that kind of come up with that when we talk about height as well. Let's talk a little bit about special ed.
Virtual biking.
Special ed and hybrid. Well, yeah, both. Both, sorry.
I don't know, I need more
We've
information.
got like, let's go special ed and virtual Viking first. Then it'll pull us into hybrid and then we'll talk more about that.
Sure, so obviously, special education and virtual Viking was hard to forecast when you don't know who is opting in, because you know, you can't make an assumption that someone is, you know, gonna need that option. So, you know, when parents called, what I was able to say is, you know, we will implement your child's IEP, you know, to the fullest extent possible. There may be some limitations given the remote opt-in scenario. I can't forecast even what those are, but, you know, try to bear with me, try to have a little trust. You know, we tend to do things, you know, I think robustly in the area of special education in East Lyme, and so we don't err on the side of less things. We just ran in-person ESY, for example. So, you know, we're there. We're gung ho. So, but it's hard, obviously, for parents to have that trust in the district and ride that out until they get further information. But so now that we know who those kiddos are, we do have teachers, special education teachers who have asked to teach remotely, so we can make some matches in that way and try to offer, you know, consistent and cohesive services for so that's that, and parents will get, you know, the information they need, you know, around that. Then moving into hybrid, I found myself last weekend trying to develop slides explaining what special education looked like in hybrid, because that's how we're open as a district, right? That's our default position. We can't be 100% in person like we typically are, so we're in hybrid. So in hybrid, since that's our default position, we have to be offering all your IEP services because that's school for you right now. So IEPs will be implemented fully in hybrid. There may be some scheduling things that cause us to offer some things virtually on your 2.5 days at home versus your 2 days on campus. So there's going to be a little bit of give and take in that way, just to schedule everything. But then I was trying to decipher, because the state gave us a document called on guidance around students with high needs and prioritizing them to potentially come to school more days than just the 2 in person. And so I found myself in quandary trying to decide how that applies to only a certain group of students when we've already said if we have an IEP, you have a need that needs to be addressed. So how am I saying some kids are available, you know, should have this option and not others? So all of a sudden I was, you know, texting Amy and the 2 special ed coordinators saying, am I crazy, or should we maybe not be trying to figure out how to say no, but we should be trying to figure out how to say yes, so that students with IEPs could come all 4 days, that we have in-person learning happening. And so so we worked at the table for many hours and with Stacy, and so all students that have an IEP will have the option for 4 days a week of in-person instruction. They can say no thank you to that. I just want to stick with my 2-day hybrid model and be in a cohort, and at which point we will place them in a cohort. And so tonight, when they get their information, they'll get a letter from me that explains this and says you have this 4-day option. We're not pressuring you, but it was easier to just do this automatically and have a few people say maybe no thank you rather than go the other way, you know, and need to start from scratch. So that's where we are in special education for hybrid.
Does anybody have any questions for Kim?
It's important to note too that in addition to special ed, there's our English language learners,
I'm sorry.
and then integrated preschool. So one of the things we're trying to message is that really prioritizing that early childhood experience, students with disabilities, as well as our English language learners, as identified cohorts that we want to ensure have the consistency or the opportunity of those additional days.
Yeah, so if you look at the hybrid then component, with the schedule, we break out, you know, our thing that's going to be going out tonight with our cohort A is the Monday, Tuesday, on site with teachers. And I want to preface, and you said it earlier, and emphasize, this is a very small group, and this is some of the tedious work that went into this. We had to go through this weekend and look at every single class to see where the balance was between cohort A and cohort B. Because what you didn't want to happen if the system screwed it up at all, you could have a class for Monday and Tuesday, kids could be 3 kids in a class or 2 kids in a class, and Thursday, Friday in that same class could be 11 or 12. You got an imbalance there. So you had to go through every one of them to make sure and then play with it if it wasn't balanced. So as it's balanced, the class sizes, for the most part, probably 95% are going to be very low class sizes. So between 5 to 10 students, roughly. I mean, on average, you can look across more than I have. Stacy has. Is that about right? So that allows teachers, when kids are on site, to have very, direct, one-to-one learning and instruction, which is excellent. It's wonderful. That's what we're looking for. So cohort A and B, Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday is that remote day where everybody is home and basically work off of that half-day synchronous schedule online. And then the second half of the day is time that they can continue discussions with teachers, with paras, and also be doing their independent asynchronous work. Then Thursday, Friday, those students are on site with the teachers and the other students. And I know this is where we've got a lot of discussions back and forth. People are asking, do we Zoom them in? We're trying to get that personalized learning experience, and the concerns with the Zoom, as mentioned earlier, to develop a personalized learning plan that they can utilize on those off days to engage in their work. If necessary, intervention time could be going on with paraprofessionals. Even kids that are excelling in the academics, there could be opportunities for them to be doing that work with peers and colleagues. We were not thinking of just zooming them in, when you're sitting at home. There's a lot of Zooms.
Yeah, so our feeling too is we have a great, so this is where this becomes exciting, and I'm going to channel my instructional committee, where this time becomes a great instructional opportunity for us. We're about ready to fast forward our long range plan about 3 years in about a month. And what we're trying to do is we want to really hone in on, so if you have those students and you're able to do a level of individualized, when those students leave you, we want them leaving with a complete individualized plan with what's a learning target for new learning? What's a task I have to do? What's a success criteria for that task? Am I watching a video of my teacher explicitly teaching? So I'm doing a flipped classroom where now I'm watching a lesson because the teacher recorded it. And so that then when I'm in front of you, when I'm on site, you and I are going heavy feedback. We're doing skill-based development. We're flipping the classroom. So we want to hone in on really this personalized plan that you might, Mariana might need to go off and she needs to continue to work on her 2-digit addition, but I don't, because I already have it, okay? Right? But I don't, so don't keep assigning me one task for all of us. That's not, that can't happen anymore. We are in a place of we need to be moving that individual growth. It ties back to even a comment very big before. It has to be about growth over time. We have to be looking at those skills over time, and we have a great opportunity to really address individual student need and give them learning and tasks at the individual level for those 2 days as well. And it's not that you won't see the teacher. You could be watching a pre-recorded teacher. You could be having the teacher on a Google Meet, because the expectation is still, even though the teacher is teaching the other cohort, they still need to provide individual instruction to the cohort at home every day they're there. So they're still giving them feedback. That's an expectation, if you will. So, and I see hands, but I don't know who's in order. So these two, so I don't know.
Jamie was before me, I know that.
So, here's my hybrid question, because I know a lot of parents have this question.
Yeah.
First day of school is a Monday.
Right? Just talked about this afternoon.
So I'm in pool for B.
Yeah.
What am I doing on the first day of school that's Monday?
So we debated this for about 45 minutes.
Am I getting up and logging on to some learning plan, or am I sleeping in and waiting until Wednesday?
And then
So
that-
my expectation would be that teachers are planning an entire learning opportunity for those 2 full days.
How are the students getting that learning plan?
So we are asking the students to log in every day, whether they're home or not.
So that
To either
includes,
the morning meeting if they're in elementary, to the, it's not home base now, you changed the name of it. Whatever middle school, it's not called home base. You
Oh,
changed
it's,
the name of that. But, or advisory period, because there's now advisory. So whether you're home or you're in, all of that class need to be on at the same time. So that's a great opportunity to orientate kids, but all those kids would also get an email or notification from their teacher prior to the start of school of what that expectation is. But no, they need to be working.
so Monday morning, whether I'm in cohort B or cohort A, I'm awake and I'm going to school.
I'm awake.
Okay, keep in mind too, there is a responsibility on our part. This is where all the training goes into the teachers in the beginning of the year with the PPE requirements and all the safety
Correct.
measures. We have to train students as well.
Right, so they might be doing COVID.
Well, I have to tell you that the
And that might be
principals have
some
been
of their
doing a
learning.
really good job sending out videos.
Yeah.
I got a video from Jason Bickman today about student distancing, and Jeff Provost sent out a video last week about student distancing and masks and everything. So they're sending out little videos to the students, which is great.
Right, but we actually we use a platform called Safe Schools, and if they have student courses, and they are the student version of the courses we take as all staff around here. So we can actually assign kids those, and that can be their work.
Okay.
As well, we can assign those.
Because that, I know a lot of parents are concerned that on Monday, their the Thursday, Friday kids are sleeping in, they're not getting up.
Okay.
This is.
And there's a disconnect.
Yes,
There's a
and that's what that hybrid causes a bit of, because of the 2 separate groups. We're trying to look at it as, think about the possibilities with that small group, the level, the push that we can make with growth. I think that individualized level is going to help us.
There's also a disconnect conversation or a thought pattern where the kids that are going to be participating in the virtual light game will be disconnected from the school, which is of course not something that anybody wants. And I'm thinking, and some of the things that you both have noted, that there is going to be integration and times where we don't want the petty kids to feel that way. So I just want to be very clear about that. And I don't, you do either, so I'm assuming, I don't really know the different ways you're going to do that. But, that is, a concern. Sure. We don't want that. Okay. I think it's Eric.
I had a few. I want to first build on Jamie's because I'm just still trying to conceptualize. So let's say I go to, not the first week of school, but just any week of school. So if I'm the Thursday, Friday, I go to school Thursday, Friday. So then on Monday and Tuesday, am I somewhat synchronized to something? In other words, my concern, and again, my kids are now in college, but I remember, it wasn't that long ago, and I remember the challenge of, then it all falls on me to kind of motivate them. Even if the work is assigned, even all that, I kind of, it falls on me to say, hey, have you done that? Hey, have you done that? And so how, and if there's not a timing of like, hey, this needs to be done by 3 o'clock, which I know there might be challenges, but for me, it's like, we want the students to be doing work during the school day, or that would be my preference, is to keep some type of structure. Because if you start having now, I don't go 3 days a week, so I'm going to start doing my work at 8 o'clock at night, and I'll stay up till 2 in the morning because it doesn't matter. Okay, I have to wake up for some morning meeting or something, and then I'll go back to sleep or whatever. Like, how can we synchronize or add structure, or do we have something?
So one of the things we talked about with the development of the personalized plan is it needs to be a conferring conversation. So who's my student and I'm the teacher, we need to confer about that. And one of the things you're talking about at the middle and high school in particular is let's treat our students a little bit like adults And what we do then in the plan is we either need to identify, like, are we going to use a Google Calendar? Because we're in Google Meets for this. So do we set up a Google Calendar? And that's the way in which we track your plan. Are we writing it on paper? But there are times, there are expected outcomes for each of the days. And then the teachers are required to provide feedback based on the work completion from that day. So they basically see the teacher at the start of the day. They have time to execute the plan based on agreement between you and I, you and I have agreed, this is the work for you to be completing. This is, you and I even documented the estimates over, I'm thinking that's about 45 minutes. Let's talk about that, when we chunk that out and almost basically schedule that experience. And then that way the teacher knows that, okay, so by, 2 o'clock, I'm going to play because I'm a high school kid. I'm going to go in and I'm going to be able to see in the folders what Johnny did and what he didn't do. And now there's an accountability conversation between, I'm now, and it's daily. It's not happening like, okay, it's now Wednesday morning, you haven't got feedback from me. It's daily.
So it's made a point that really I was hoping for. So at 2 o'clock, stuff is due. Now they can decide if what they're doing at 10 a.m. versus 11 a.m. so forth, but it's not like in college Canvas. I think most colleges it's 11:59 or something like that, right? And we don't want 11:59.
We don't. But yeah. I will tell you, like we had a couple situations with kiddos even where like there could be a scenario where because it's household cohorting, I'm the oldest kid because I'm a high school kid, and my 3 younger siblings are home with me. So I'm also babysitting my 3 younger siblings and doing this, and that's why it needs to be a conference. So it might need to be, well, could I start that at 9:30? Because my kindergartner sister is going to be on, and I always have to help her with Zoom. And that's where I think the individual piece comes to it. So maybe that kiddo's completion date is more like 3 o'clock rather than 2 o'clock, but the expectation of the work is still the same.
Okay, and yeah, I mean, there's always exceptions.
But midnight, no.
You want
no, the teacher has to go home.
And then, So then, so if we go to AP classes for 1 second, or high school classes, I'm thinking about AP. So AP, there is an exam in May, and that's a set dates that you have these. So I know you talked about, well, Mariana, needs help with whatever 2-digit addition or whatever she needed help with. But in AP, there's certain classes like that you have to take this test, and everybody takes the same test.
Yeah.
So how does something like that work with you're only in school 2 days a week? Or, you're only in that class. Well, I don't know. Are you only in that class face-to-face 1 day a week?
If you're day 1, day 2, yes.
So you're only in class 1 day a week versus in the normal sequence, you'd be 2-3, 2-3, 2-3.
Correct.
I'm struggling to see how those students are going to do well on their AP exams.
So 2 things have happened with AP in regards to College Board as well as our ECE courses. Is some of them have come right out and reprioritized some of the outcomes for those courses, knowing that most of the districts are hybrid. So they have reset the pacing for those courses and stretched them out to still meet the outcome of the test. So they've stretched out some of that content and or made notifications of some changes that they've made to the assessment itself. Now,
does the test have less overall content?
It could.
So that's troubling.
Yeah.
Not that we can do anything about it, but these classes, you're in theory getting college credit for. But the exam's easier now.
Right, exactly.
Sorry, the exam is now. I gotta watch my language and how I'm gonna say it, but you've made it easier. There's less content on this exam. So now I'm gonna be able to pass the exam. Now I learned less, so now I'm more likely to get my 4 or 5 or whatever I'm gonna get. Now I go to college and I got a 5 in my, bio, AP bio or whatever. And now I go and take second level, or I got an AP Calc, and now I'm taking my engineering Calc, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, I never learned that. And so I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
and
that's a
it's hard,
society
because
issue,
AP
not us, but I don't know how that's.
AP's still coming off of the spring, and it was not a joyful experience with all those kids doing it from home.
I know.
So I'm expecting even more changes, because I'm really not sure what they're gonna do in regards to that. But then the other piece is, having talked to a couple of the AP teachers, a lot of them are moving completely to flipped classroom. They are videotaping themselves like never before, teaching every single lesson, and they're flipping that classroom.
Okay.
So I do have to say that is a model that they are definitely, we can record ourselves, we can teach them to have that. So I do know that they're certainly embracing that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And Eric, I can follow up with the specific AP test I just put in here.
Oh, no, I mean, it's just broadly, it seems.
I know.
You're gonna get a lot of questions from those parents, I have a feeling, and it's twofold. It's that they wanna learn the material, which is the most important thing, because then they're gonna take that to move on and try to apply whatever they learned in college. And if another district did better than us, I don't know, worry about that. Yeah.
Agreed. And that's what we.
Let's just say one comment. I hear what you're saying, but I'm just thinking, not the only school system in this pickle. So it may be that the playing field becomes equal when they get to college. And I'm assuming that, I'm making this assumption, that when those students who are taking these AP courses will probably be prepared if initially they don't, maybe they feel like they have missed something. But I do agree. I wish there was something we could do about it, but it's.
I don't think colleges will lessen their curriculum, or I doubt they would. And if they did, at some point, it'll bite us as a society. Whether it's your doctor, people are studying to be a doctor and they haven't learned stuff. That's not very good. So, whatever they're studying for, I'm just so somewhere they need to catch up at some point.
They'll probably catch up their freshman year. No, I'm just assuming because most of the kids get a well when they go to school their freshman year. It's because they haven't been taught to study independently. And those that leave here usually know how to study independently.
We do train our students. Yeah, absolutely.
Keep everything going.
Yeah, we will.
So just really quickly, and then I'm going to call on Derek too, but I wanted to say that I attended each one of the term tests, and a lot of the questions were answered. There were some that were not, and I know that we're working hard to answer those questions. And I think that you guys have done a good job on the virtual lighting to kind of try to get people to understand. There was a resonating question, but also fear that I feel like that's resonating within parents and the community, and that's that if we go fully remote or the partial model, that we're going to have what we had when we went offline in March. And I know, and I have faith, and I know what we've put into the technology. I don't believe that is going to happen. But the question kept getting asked, and the poor woman was not getting answered, and she was getting angry like every time, and I kind of blame her. But I think that we need to, have a conversation and really talk about what the differences are going to be. And I know that nothing can be assured, but to kind of help people understand that if and when we do go fully remote or in the hybrid model, the way that instruction is going to be coming into homes is going to be a complete different from March. And I know that you spoke to that, and I thought it was fantastic on video. But the more that we talk about that, I think, and answer those questions, because people are afraid of that. They're like, I don't want to be there again. And
And we shouldn't be, right, as East Lyme, and certainly from the amount of money and time that's been put in. Okay. So, Barry, go ahead.
Making a lot of notes here, and I probably could go through 3 hours worth of stuff on the research on automation and AT and all that stuff.
Yeah.
The thing that intrigues me about all this is that I see us having first great compliments to the administrative functions. I mean, I watched all the town videos, the arrows in the hallways, the tapes, the buses, the pictures of the people. I mean, the administrative functions of getting this thing up and running are just great. I mean, it's very, very solid. You know, and I think the compliments to you on it is that that'd be a lot of work to get all to the instructional side of it. I really see this as such a great opportunity instructionally. For at least a decade or more, we've seen us doing research with technology. We've seen this coming. We knew that there was going to be a day when finally schools were going to have to get up and say, we're going to have to take advantage of this great opportunity. Now, I'm not talking about, but I mean, some of the companies I've worked with, for example, are working on holographs. So you can imagine somebody like, say, one of the demonstrations I went through with them, they're learning biology. And so you're sitting down in front of a screen and a holograph of a heart comes out at you. And you can poke that heart to see like what's happening in different things. If you are interested in curing cancer, they can have a holograph of a cancer cell come out in front of you. And you can actually manipulate that hologram. You know, it's like just absolutely astounding what's out there. And we've been working on this, saying, you know, when are schools going to open up to the possibilities available for technology? And this is such a great opportunity. And my concern here is that if we continue down the road of thinking of technology only as a way to continue force-fed assignments, we're going to stay in this loop forever. If we continue to just not understand what we're really trying to do in education, we're going to stay in this loop forever. So the thing I'm trying to figure out is like, what are we trying to do? And if we read some of the parents' letters that they sent me, and I kept saying in my mind, if we could write back to this parent, here's what we're trying to do with our education system. Here's what we're trying to produce with the students in our system, and here's how we're using technology together. So it's like, where are we going and what are we trying to do? Now, I listened to all the town halls, and each one of them, you know, one thing that struck me, I was listening through the explanation of social emotional learning. It's very, very well done, lots of slides on that, and was really clearly thinking. The thing that struck me is that there was an entanglement of two issues. First, there was the concern for safety and security of the kid, which is essential. You know, I mean, the kids can't learn unless they feel in a safe and secure environment, and we're doing a really, really good job of establishing that. When the references came back to the graphic, it was interesting that, you know, there was reference back to kind of the 5 outcomes, you know, the responsibility, the decision making, the self-awareness. And then for each one of those items, there was then a list of 4 or 5 underlines, you know, additional items. So basically, self-awareness includes other people's items. Self-management includes other people's items. If you add all this up, it's like 25 different components of what we're trying to teach kids. And if this is going to be like the overarching thing, my assumption on this is that we had reliable and valid indicators for every one of those 25 issues. And we put those into a statistical analysis with a factor analysis. One factor was found. So if somebody scored high in one of those 25 things, they would probably score high on the other 24. But they're unitary concepts. I kept saying, what is between the lines? If we put all these 25 things together and did a factor analysis, what are we trying, that's what we're trying, it seems that's what we're trying to produce, but we can't make it explicit. Kind of implicit, tangled in everything we talked about. But I keep wondering, like, what is it that we're trying to do? If we could figure out that one thing we're trying to do, then we could say, here's how we're using technology fully to get there. If we continue to think on terms of technology and to continue to force that assignments, we're never going to get to the explicit one thing we're trying to do. And I really think a lot about this, and so I think this is a great opportunity, and I think as we work along with this current level of hybrid and whatever, it's okay to start there. But I think very soon, if we're going to stay in this loop of trying to figure out how to do hybrid, cohorts, when are they in Zoom and when are they off, we're going to continue that forever. If we continue to think of education as just a force tech model or science and content at the end of itself, instead of looking at what the means to it. That means to begin. Then we can really open up and really use technology to the fullest extent to say, here's what we're trying to do. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking about, and I continually listen and list all this stuff and keep thinking about how to get there.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so powerful.
Amen.
Honestly, right there. Yeah.
But we're battling against the we gotta be clear with parents, like Barry said. We have to get that message out because parents are coming back to us and saying, don't make our kids the guinea pigs in this survey. So we're battling against that. It's just we've got to get the clarity out there as to what we're trying to do. There's fear. The fear is overriding, the vision, I think.
Well, we don't have key stakeholders in it, which is our teachers providing those documents, working alongside of those teachers and really seeing the actions of those types of tests. They're not out there right now. It's just us and parents.
Thank you, Barry. It's very powerful what you just said. Does anybody have any other questions or comments?
I do. My question is about the hybrid model, and for the kids who are, say, A or whatever, like Monday, Tuesday, and then you have the Thursday, Friday. So you're calling Monday, Tuesday A, and then Thursday, Friday B. Is that correct or not? Okay, but I looked through the calendar and I saw about 6 Mondays that were not in session. So I'm just wondering, how can we look at that, or is that?
That's a good question. The holidays, you're talking about the holidays.
Yeah.
Correct.
There's some Fridays in there too, Kate. It almost, I think it tries to balance itself out a little bit with some PD days on Fridays. This is if we go hybrid all year.
Right.
Yeah.
Those
So
were half days, and I'm just wondering, but is it possible to switch at some point, or do Tuesday, Wednesday, and then have everything?
I think that screws up people's childcare issues. Could be a big problem with that. That's only if we start kind of moving things around. I thought it balanced itself out more when we looked across. I was talking to another district about this actually earlier today, because I was asking about the first week. We're really looking at the first week because I have some concerns with we only have 4 days that first week, not 5.
Right.
And it's the first week of school, so we're trying to work that scenario out. But if we start moving things around, we're going to screw up people's childcare, which I think is one of the major issues for not necessarily one of the reasons, but just ample time ahead. I think it between the Fridays and the Mondays, they almost balance themselves out. I gotta be back. So yeah, we've gotten the question, we're thinking about that. I'm not saying it wouldn't, maybe we do make some changes, we have to, I think we gotta kind of dive into that.
Well, if we could do like a day one, day two kind of thing, where you do it in the high school, but maybe that doesn't apply, I don't know, it's definitely thinking out of the box.
Yeah.
And problem solve, like we've never had a problem solved previously, but, right. And then before and after school, like Esteban was talking about, is that just completely off?
It would be cost prohibitive to run the program. We'd actually be losing money with where we were at with the number of participants that were interested in.
Yeah, altogether, we surveyed the parents, who would be interested in sending their child, and altogether, we only had 61 students across all 3 buildings. And in one building in particular, we only had 15 students. And in order to ensure social distancing was 1 to 10, and 2 staff members in the cost of the program, and then have a nurse available should there need to be a need for an isolation room, a nurse's aide. Once Mariana was very helpful to Andrew Scott runs the program. I think after the 2nd week, we would have been operating in the negative.
It is, and that's just, it's devastating. I mean, listening to it resonated, being a parent with 2 children myself, since March, everybody knows here that I went from non-essential to essential overnight. There's a juggle that parents have never had to juggle before, and everything is just so incredibly challenging. It's unbelievable, and it would have been nice, and it is, I think, devastating for some, because they've just simply, number one, right now, there's no assurances, and we've been talking about this for weeks, right? Everybody's having a different experience. Everyone, not everybody's in the same boat. Lots of different challenges for so many different families. There's no right answer. There's no perfect answer, and sometimes we don't even have it, and that's hard. So I think that, well, I thank you for putting this survey out. I thank you for trying. Because I know that you did. I know that you did.
It's great.
Andrea Scott too.
We got every single parent that's been in before and after care program for the last 3 years responded.
I mean, so parents are trying to juggle, teachers are trying to juggle, who, especially for those little ones, it's even more difficult. I know that Jamie and I have been talking about that. I mean, I think that some will have the question to have to stay home, and then they'll have other challenges because of staying home. There's really no win-win, and it is devastating. There is a lot of people, there are child care agencies that are in the community. I am hearing that either they're booked up or they're not offering, so there's issues there. I know that a lot of people are starting to, find their own little circle, their own little cohort of people to try to help each other. I remember when my kids were small and I had no network. Like, we didn't have any family members, we didn't have anybody, it was just us. And I remember somebody saying, you have to create a network for yourself. So whatever, people can do to help each other in any way, help her. Whether or not it's just listening or guidance or, who possibly maybe to refer to help someone. The other question was, and I don't even know if anybody here has the answer, but clearly the Park and Rec had the after school opportunity for the middle schoolers, and I don't know if they're going to run that. Does anybody know or no? I haven't heard anything, because that was something too.
I don't think so. But I haven't heard of that. Probably not. Just one other thing that we need to make sure everybody's aware of that we're really trying to put a line on is, the wanting to switch now. This information goes out to parents, tonight with cohorts. People are going to come back and say, well, that doesn't work for me, or we've already heard, I've got this situation or that situation in my kids, or over here. We have to hold the line with this because it's going to we start moving everybody around. So it's like redistricting all over again. You would keeping kids saying that's what you're going to. If we have an emergency situation, if somebody potentially can show us that they could lose a job, that sort of thing, then we will individually look at case by case scenarios, but just can't freely move people around because they don't like cohort A or that sort of thing. It's gonna screw everything up. You're not working on it.
And it's really hard when they're siblings.
That's the other
Like
piece
even
too.
today when I was with, we're moving a family and there's 3 of them. There's one in elementary, one in the middle, one in a high school. All the other 2 schools, look at what the kid was enrolled in there, find out what that does to all of their cohorts and their numbers. And then you have to you're looking at it as a household now. You're not looking at it by one. It's a very different ripple effect.
So now let me ask you, the cohorting, is that being done by a computer or is it being done by you? Because no, honestly, I'm asking a serious question because the busing last year was put out and that was electronically done. And it was, that we've had a lot of challenges with that. And sometimes it's not always better to go and just run on that computer that.
Yeah. So we use Infinity Campus, obviously it's a student management system, and they work to develop an algorithm that works for us. But the key to the algorithm, which is great, is every school had to have done their schedule. So they had to identify the ideal place for every kid. So the high school schedule had to be done with all kids enrolled in courses, done in middle school kids had to be in the kivas they wanted them with, teachers they wanted with, elementary had to be in it. And then basically what they do is they take all the students and they basically, to be honest with you, high school kiddo will have the most impact because they're in the most courses.
Yeah.
And then they look down from their other siblings to there, but they take into account their flags. So if they're a student with a disability, they look at that flag, and then they also look at if they're a student with a 504 that's also in there for a flag, and they look at those components and then they match them up in regards to their actual cohort. Then what we did is after, trust me, we hit the button, it was one of these on Friday. There we go.
We did it live too, live mode.
And 4 minutes later, it came back and you're like, that's either really good or that's really bad. I don't know. And then we went through every one and looked at boy, girl, looked at what it is, and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm only finding like 20 sections at the high school. I'm like, there are hundreds of sections at the high school. Only 20? We can do this. So that's where we went. And so you got a computerized experience, like algorithm, but then you got humans checking and looking. And then our principals were third round today, and they third round checked every building. So that's where we are.
Now, does anybody have any other questions? Eric, go ahead.
So I don't want to leave this topic without talking about sports. And I know we only have so much time. So the CIC is
Flippy floppy.
what's that?
They're flippy floppy.
They've done everything. If they can manage to do more things wrong, I don't know how they would do that. So they have just been inept, and it's unfortunate. But I understand us sticking kind of by and seeing, and right now I think they've just stopped everything is the latest, and including practices that they were allowing originally. At some point, they're going to come up with some decision, and I hope that we can decide on what we want for our school versus what CIC is saying. Obviously, we wouldn't do more than the CIC, but if we wanted to do less. But in the meantime, so I don't think fall sports, my personal opinion, I don't think they should have. I don't think we should be inviting other schools to our school, and I don't think we should be sending our students to other schools with all the complications that we're already having just to get our students in school for a couple days a week. So that's my commentary. My action or ask is, if that doesn't happen, we do need something for our students to do extra. So can we have, and I don't know if it's our, I don't want, you guys have enough on your plates, but can we get like our phys ed teachers maybe in each of the levels to think about some creative intramural activities that they can put together? It can be, and you can have a whole variety of things. I was thinking to myself, like orienteering, where you have different we have land, and kids have to go and find different things out there and maybe whatever. You can have intramural basketball, intramural volleyball, you can have soccer, you can have, what's the Harry Potter? Yeah, you can do, whatever these things are. You can just come up with some creative ideas that we can get students involved in, and they're kind of East Lyme with East Lyme. So at least we're kind of, again, I'll keep you giving my bubble. I like the bubble. It's working in WNBA. It's working in the NBA. It's working really well. They have 0 positive tests. So they're doing something right. They're not trying, they're staying together, but they're not, they're making it work. We won't have a complete bubble, but at least if we're only intermingling for the most part within ourselves, it minimizes our risk. So if we could get some people thinking about what can we do to make it fun for the students doing some after school activities and stuff, that would be really good. And I do want to have the sports discussion post the CIAC whenever that they come out with something.
Yeah, supposed to happen this week, and there's another meeting tomorrow. ECC is talking about doing something at this point now. The problem, DPH's recommendation was different than what CIAC had recommended. So that's really where there was a lot of work.
And the CIAC came out with theirs the same day that they got the letter from the TPH. They told them not to do what they did. So they didn't wait.
That wasn't
not well done. So
no.
I wonder if we could coordinate with Parks and Rec. I think that's a great idea. I wonder if that's something that we could do.
Yeah, we probably have some creative thoughts of fun
absolutely.
things for the students to do.
Yeah.
Keep them outside.
And then when you mentioned the CIAC, we are a CIAC school, so it's going to be interesting. I don't know if we can.
We can opt out. Well, I don't know, but we can opt out. I don't know what the repercussions are.
You gotta be careful of what you're running, because they have a lot of coverage and different things that, we could, and we'd also want probably, depending on what we plan and run, we would want either our medical advisor or legislate to kind of have input into that to say, give us your blessing on this. I would not want to run something and they say, that's not a good idea, and then something happens.
Right, and it is interesting what you get from Ledgelight as far as approval, and then you'll hear something completely different. So it really is, I said kind of wishy-washy, because it is.
Well, the scenario that I can see that I just want to avoid is we have, I'm not going to say a name, but we have another school come here and play soccer. And they're on our, and then the next day, one of the players tests positive. And now we do our tracing and we are hosts. Like we have everybody who we have this, it just changes, our whole world changes immediately. It's one thing that's going to change immediately from our own doing, but now we're just adding, and that school is playing other schools, who's playing other schools, and now you just opened your bubble pretty big.
This happened this weekend up in New Hampshire with a hockey tournament.
It did.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, hockey camp. One of the players ended up getting it, and he was in a camp in Connecticut the weekend before. And
yeah, and even I was talking to Jeff about it. So my son who wrestles, clearly there's not a lot of wrestling tournaments, although there is one in New Jersey, and he was begging to go. And he said, absolutely not, I'm not going. And how many kids are going to go?
Yes.
What the implications of that could be for kids.
Yeah.
So it's really here.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna,
I don't like your phone singing at 11 o'clock with your cohort. So I have to run back to Central Office. So I apologize.
I am waiting for my ding.
I know, I apologize. I don't want.
Now, if we don't have any more questions on the roadmap, are you ready to move on?
yes, please, yeah, for all,
Stand in my room, I don't see what it is. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
All right, so we're gonna move on to 7 for discussion with, and on Black Lives Matter.
Okay, so yeah, so we have two representatives here. We have some people I think that are still on Zoom. The group was part of policy, and I'm not kind of sure. You guys had a couple items you wanted to share, or thoughts you wanted to. Why don't we turn it right over to you for a couple thoughts, and then we'll go from there.
Thanks. We sort of have organized, we weren't able to engage last time. So last time we spoke was July 13th meeting, and so we weren't allowed to engage. We just presented and then we couldn't have a discussion as for the format of these meetings. So the way that we sort of structured our portion of this is to have each of us sort of engage in the different parts of policy, hiring, training, et cetera. So I think if Ben is still on, he was going to start off. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah. No, thanks, thanks for coming tonight, or, gathering to listen to us present. We're the representatives of East Lyme for Black Lives Matter, which is a group that's committed to fighting racism and supporting people of color in East Lyme. I'm Ben Ostrowski. I graduated East Lyme High School in 2013 and then Brown University, and now I'm a PhD candidate at Carnegie Mellon University. Actually, first, I just want to say that to anyone, who's sort of hesitant about our intentions, and specifically to Ms. Mandela, who spoke at the beginning, please know that we're super welcome to discussion about our proposals for East Lyme Public Schools. That's literally what we've been working for months, is to try to have discussions with people. So we urge you to reach out to us to discuss. We're happy to explain in detail how our proposals will benefit not just the students of color in East Lyme, but all students, which includes your daughter. I'm messaging Jacqueline our group email. So Jackie, if you wouldn't mind posting that, in the chat for the full group, so everyone can, if you want to reach out to talk, please, let's have a discussion and we can inform you more about our proposals and how they will benefit you and everyone else. And so, as noted at the July meeting, our proposals are backed by both testimonials from East Lyme residents of all backgrounds, but they're also backed by empirical evidence, which displays the educational benefit of these measures for all students, regardless of background or race. And we hope this to be a productive discussion that results in concrete, tangible action that'll benefit all residents of East Lyme, but especially those of color. Our representatives, some in person, some on Zoom, will present a number of statements regarding requested actions to be taken by the board and by East Lyme Public Schools. Now, in each case, as when we presented in July, you're going to notice that our reps will present the problem, then they'll identify the solution, and then we'll provide you the exact content to make this solution happen. And so all you have to do is approve it. We are doing the legwork for you because we understand that reopening schools is a large, unprecedented task, and you want to prepare to reopen in the best way possible. The thing is that we want to make it clear that if you don't immediately acknowledge racism in East Lyme and in society more broadly, then you are not preparing to reopen in the best way possible. And that's just the truth of the matter. So please listen carefully to our reps' points, and then be prepared to plan concrete action that can be taken shortly and effectively. And thank you very much. So now I think Nikki's going to speak next.
Yes. Can everyone hear me? I'm just gonna stand because I'm all the way over here. So my name is Serena Valentine. I graduated from East Lyme High School in 2016, and right now I'm working towards my bachelor's, bachelor's in science for music education. I've spent a lot of time in schools, observations, student teaching, and things like that. So education is particularly important to me, and also, being a living, breathing person of color who went through the East Lyme public school system, I do know that there are some shortcomings in terms of giving a voice to minorities and people of racial and ethnic the racial and ethnic minorities and people of color, and particularly engaging in discussions about diversity and racism specifically. And the lack of those discussions is a problem that contributes to racism, the lack of discussions about culture in general and diversity. Having grown up here and gone through the school system, my father is Puerto Rican and my mom is Lebanese. She was born in Liberia. My dad was born in Puerto Rico. My mom speaks Arabic. My dad speaks Spanish. And I have a lot of really diverse cultural experiences throughout my life. And growing up in East Lyme, it was almost kind of ignored that anything was different about me. And some might say, oh, well, we should treat everyone equally and things like that. But the lack of conversation about diversity made me feel like I should be like everyone else, and my differences weren't celebrated and things like that. And so in terms of what our group is trying to do, we're trying to give a voice to those people who feel like their differences are being ignored, that their differences aren't being celebrated, and in particular, safety in that regard. Because when people aren't educated about people who are different than them, that can create aggression, and that can create racism, that can create even microaggressions that can affect the mental health and physical health of some of the people of color who are students in this time. So having said that, one of the things that someone had said earlier, I think, is that students can't learn if they don't feel safe. So racism is a problem in the world, and it is a problem with specific communities in Islam. I've seen it firsthand. It's not something that you can just assume that people in Islam or people in the Islam public school systems aren't going to be racist. So there are people everywhere who are. So the thing that we're trying to do is bring more awareness to that, have those conversations, and try to stop it before it happens, because that is a safety issue for students. And I've heard testimonials, we have collected testimonials in our Google Doc proposal from people of all ages who have gone through the school system. I only graduated 4 years ago, and I know that probably not much has changed since then. So there are definitely always ways that we can do better in regards to things like that. So what I'm going to talk about specifically that I don't think has been addressed or discussed very much between us and you guys is a statement from the school, kind of just stating a stance on the issues that have been brought up in the country and in the world. Because with a movement like the Black Lives Matter movement that not only took over the conversation of the country for several months, but the entire world, it's not something that can necessarily be ignored, especially by people who are influencing those students who are absorbing all of this information through the internet. And as of right now, there is no statement from the district or from the teachers or from the administration that's saying we do stand with minority students. We are dedicated to protecting our Black students who may feel unsafe, especially in an environment in society where this is such a topic that has been brought to light, that has been put on, that has been put on the internet and everywhere for so long. So it would be dangerous to not say anything, because the ambiguity of not saying anything might reassure people who do think it's okay to engage in racist behaviors, which is obviously something that should not be tolerated, because it should be, as I stated in the last meeting during my speech, it is a safety issue, and it should be up there in the policies with bullying, with sexual assault, with any of those things that could be a danger to students, because it will affect them with their mental and physical health in certain ways. So I actually have a statement written that you guys could work from as a foundation, just as an example, because I know that there is a political connotation, which there should not be, but there is a political connotation sometimes to certain people with Black Lives Matter. So there is a way to put out a statement that will reassure minority students and reassure Black students that they should feel safe here, without explicitly saying Black Lives Matter, as that could create some issues with specific parents of people. So what I have written out is, in response to racial violence and unrest throughout the country in the past few months, East Lyme Public Schools would like to make it known that we are dedicated to the safety, equity, and inclusion of our racial and ethnic minority students. Racism will not be tolerated in our schools, and we will do everything we can to make all of our students feel safe and welcome. So that's something that's general, but will reassure the public that we are working towards equity, inclusion, and diversity in this community, especially when the majority of students are white. It might be hard to make it known that those minority students are being addressed and that people know what their needs and what their worries are. So that's why I have to say thank you for listening. I think, well, specifically, sorry, to finish, is this something that could be voted on or discussed or decided tonight as far as if a statement will be put out or what that statement would say? Would that be something that could be determined tonight?
No. Yeah, it would need to be an agenda item. It would need to be vetted. We need to take a look at it. I'm not saying that it's not important. If it is, I just sort of, there's a process that would have to be placed.
Okay, so is there someone like specifically who could take point on that or give us?
Sure, if you want to send it to me, I'll take point on that. And then we will discuss it, with the full board. Maybe you can bring it to a subcommittee for some discussion first, and then bring it up to the full.
What's the resistance to putting out a statement saying that we support minority students? Why is that a controversial thing?
And I'm not saying it. No, I'm not saying it's controversial. I'm not trying to be controversial. I'm just trying to, I think the board really needs to have a discussion about that. Administratively, we'd like to discuss that too, at all points of this, and also our attorney should take a look at the language specific too. You have to be just careful in the verbiage and the wording that goes into that goes out on behalf of the district.
So how quickly could that happen? It's really what I think we're wondering.
That's up to the board. It's up to the board, the next board meeting.
Is that not something that we could discuss now?
I don't know if I do that.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I would say that as a board member, I wouldn't feel comfortable putting out a statement that the entire board has not reviewed. And you're missing a whole bunch of members here tonight. We barely made a quorum for a meeting tonight. And I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that the Board of Ed feels something without having the entire Board of Ed input on that. Not that it's not important, but I don't want
But
the
don't
Board
you
of Ed.
think it's important to do this before the
No,
start of
I'm
the
not saying it's not
year?
important. I'm just saying that the
I
entire
mean, we've been
board
trying to
should
get
say something.
conversations, we tried to get to the board meeting in June. And so we waited a month for July 13th. And now we're waiting a month to August 17th. At some point, you have to take a stance. At some point, you have to make a statement. And not making a statement is making a statement.
So, I guess a few things. So one is, I really appreciate, the meeting a few weeks ago, whenever, when you presented and this presentation, for me, it was, you guys are very articulate. You're talking very articulate. It's getting me to think. It's getting me to process. We all need time to think and process. I know you guys have been working on this and thinking about it. It's like, but we have, as you've heard for the past, 3 hours, we have a lot of other things we're also processing. I know the agenda sequencing is not right, but the next item where we talk about our board retreat and, the areas that we want to focus on, we had a list like this, and we narrowed it to 2 things. Reopening schools and what you guys brought to us as our 2 that we have to get right. For me, there's a little sequencing that, we have to get our students back this, you heard all the issues that we've been going through and trying to figure out. This is really hard stuff. Unprecedented times. It's unprecedented for both things. Or I think that COVID-19 is more unprecedented than maybe some of the issues we've had with social justice in our society. But we're trying to figure this out. So I guess I'd ask one is some patience. Two is, I do appreciate that statement. I was hoping for actually discussion, because I had questions about, so can we make that statement? And my question was, to who? Like, is that to parents, to students? How do you, like, as you think about it, I think we need to be, as you're helping us, and I appreciate it, and I'm an analytical mind, so I need to process. So I heard what you said, a few weeks ago, and it took me some time to process and figure things out. I'm sure we're all kind of in that processing mode, or I may be more that type person than others, but it takes us. And then there's a process that we have to follow for anything. Because if we don't make sure our attorney reviews any language that we're going to say, we end up getting ourselves in trouble. So that's the way the world works, and it's unfortunate. So I do ask, from my perspective, ask for patience. It's not that that we don't think this is important. We have two things that we put as important: reopening schools and this. So that's it. We had 25 items on our list that we narrowed to 2. So I understand frustration. I understand that you want us to move quickly, and I do want to move quickly, but quickly with proper kind of steps, and making sure that we're doing the right thing as a board, that we have obligations as a board. So I'm speaking for myself, so others may have different opinions, but I want to make sure that as a board, we're taking the right steps and doing the right thing. I want to hear from you guys. I want to have the discussion, because I want to learn more. As I said in the last time, I'm still trying to learn. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand what's the best way. And you guys have some great ideas. There might be other ideas that we come up with as well. And if we can work together to kind of come up with that. And I know, schools opening. It's going to happen in a couple of weeks, and we do need, then you get into like the technical, this is a discussion item. So this was for us to finally be able to have this discussion, and that can lead to then discussion and action. And that would be the next thing.
That's what we're hoping for. I think, we want the discussion.
Yeah.
And I know September 16th, Joelle is going to be doing that training for the Board of Ed, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. But we don't need to wait. We don't need to wait until it's totally right. We don't need to wait until we totally understand in order to take action. You can do small actions along the way, and making a statement or teacher training or what have you, is those small steps that you can show that you are doing something, and not wait to do this.
So I think we are taking, I'll want to comment on that, because I think we are taking small steps. We are stating in 7B that we have 2 big items, which is reopening schools and this. That is a step. We are having Joelle come and teach us and talk to us and go through that training. That's another step. So it's not that we're just, and we invited you to this meeting to have a discussion because we want to have the discussion. So I don't think it's fair to say we're just, waiting and going to make some big thing. I just don't know that there's 10 opinions plus administration. We have to have some alignment of what that thing and what even those little things are. It doesn't have to be that we're going to make this, here are the 5 things and we're going to do A, B, C, D, and E all at the same time. I'm hoping we can knock off, pardon the phrase, but come up with, 1, 2, or 3, that might be easier, like maybe a statement that gets reviewed and we all agree with and goes, that might be a quicker thing, and some of the other things may be more difficult. That's fine, but I should be quiet because we have a lot of other board members.
I just have hold on 1 second, if you don't mind, just hold on 1 second. Jeff, if you don't mind, can you just speak to the response that the board has had and the district has had already? Because I can go back to June
was made aware of some issues and that did not look impacted. So that needed addressing. And I know that the response was very quick as far as me requesting the policies to be pulled, that should be where you start. And then I know at high school created a committee.
There's been a group of high school staff members and with the administrator too, though Deb Kelly and Henry have been a big part. They've been engaging in weekly meetings and conversations.
What is the intent? What is the intent of that?
It's the dialogue. It's open the dialogue. The resources that have been provided have been excellent. I went through those, and I actually outlined a few of them that we want to do is provide staff. Big piece is providing staff some resources to have prior to the start of the school year to utilize. We can't mandate that they use them, but they might want them and be able to use them. So we're going to share those prior to the start of the year. We're working on the formation of an equity and inclusion committee. We're not going to call it diversity, and equity and inclusion committee. So that's in the process of being formulated. The things that, Erica mentioned, the policy work. There are a large handful of things that we're engaging in right now to try and continue to move this forward and move it forward at a quick pace. Because it is, like you said, it is the number 2 item behind reopening our schools that we are focused on, and you as a board, right down to training you on 9/16 as well, with specific training. So those
Maybe
are,
I should have backed up because I didn't even introduce myself.
I'm sorry. So just in regards to what I was discussing before, I think I am proud of the conversations that we've been having with the Board of Education, with that committee that we've been meeting with weekly. It's awesome. Like, I'm really happy that we are having these conversations, that this isn't being ignored. I think the reason why I brought up this statement and why that was important to me was because I want the community. And our Facebook group, or our group, is compiled of members of the community, parents, teachers, students, former students, alumni, people who live in the community, wanting to see what's happening in East Lyme in terms of this movement, and to know that they're being supported, and that they're not, that we as a community are not putting up with violence against Black people and things like that. So the reason why I was bringing up the statement and pushing for the statement is because I want the community, the parents and the students to know that the school is doing things, that we're having these discussions, because a lot of people have no idea that this is happening. A lot of people don't know that the Board of Education is working on these things, and that you are having that training, and that you are planning on the training in October, and that we're working together to do this. So I think that's why the statement is so important, because I don't want the parents to feel excluded from this process, the students to feel like, people don't care about the issues that are happening to them, especially minority and Black students. So that's why I thought it was so important. And instead of discussing it generally, which is something that we've done time and time again and things, and gone back and forth and everything like that, what I really want to focus on is specific things. So as far as something specific to get to the goal that I was talking about previously, when is it possible for the board, everyone on the board, because I know that not everyone is here, when is that going to happen, and when can that discussion happen? Just so I have an idea in my head, and we have an idea in our heads, when this can actually be taking place, instead of just saying, yeah, that's important, we'll get to it at some point. Obviously, there's a lot of things going on. There are more important things going on, and I just want to know what that timeline is, because it doesn't have to be right now, but to know that it is happening, and to know when it is happening would be awesome. So yeah. Go ahead. Oh yeah, hold on, Barry.
I'm gonna make it quick. I'm gonna go find another room. I'll spend too long in this place, and I'm worried about the virus and stuff.
Okay.
Right, we can contain it here.
Okay.
Just one thing, the assumption that we don't research, personally, I worked in model cities for 4 years back in the 1970s, and I spent my time on this. I understand what's going on, know what we're doing, know we have a process we have to go forward with, and please allow us to do this without trying to famous into saying that we don't understand what we're doing. I'm gonna work with Jackie and see if I can include another.
Oh, thank you, Barry.
You need help, Barry, just so we can, I can more set you up.
Go ahead.
Somewhat related to what Serena was just saying, I personally do want to engage with the rest of the board on making sure that the entire community knows that we do stand by our students of color. And I understand we're not going to take action tonight, but I do think it's fair for us to discuss what that timeline would look like, especially, I know Jeff, you had mentioned potentially bringing it to a committee, but I don't think that reopening schools and working on making our district more anti-racist needs to happen like 1 and 2. I think we can actively be working towards both of those things at the same time. So I understand we're not taking action tonight, but I do think it's a fair push to put an actual date on the calendar.
So I know Candace was there and Kate, you were there at policy. For those of you who weren't there, we did talk about putting together a community forum and starting of a task force and making a statement, an open letter to the community. We did talk about doing those things at policy. We just haven't had a chance to get them started yet. But we did talk about an open letter to the community from the Board of Ed on how we feel, and doing a forum with the community and getting also community engagement so that they know that we're working on it and it's important to us. It's just that we haven't gotten there yet, but it is on stuff that we talked about getting done. It's just with everything that just slammed into us this week and into this year, it's just been so overwhelming that we are trying to do it. It's just getting everybody together to do it is hard right now. But
And like I said before, like the conversations that we've been having and that we've had with the high school committee of teachers, they have been fantastic. It's amazing. However, the only frustration is that we've been having these conversations for months on end with not a lot happening other than that. And I completely understand how hard it is. I really, really do. But that's why I am just asking specifically, would it be the next board meeting next month that something like this could happen? Is there any way I could get like an answer about when this could kind of get up, or is there no way to provide that information?
I don't think there's any way to provide that information if I may say that as a board member. No, I'll tell you, it's okay. I guess I hear what you're saying. You want us to give you a timeline, and our timeline probably works a little bit differently than what your timeline does. It's important. We're not just giving you lip service. It's very important to all of us, but we've got a crisis that's a little bit bigger, trying to get these kids back to school. We've got to get these kids back to school, and we've got to get them in safely. And it's something I think we've all been taking home every night, worrying and thinking about. It's not that we're not concerned, but it's just, I think if you give us maybe, I'm gonna say January 1st, we have a semester under our belts. Again, I'm not the superintendent, but we have a semester under our belts, and we know that what we have in place is working. We've had no major outbreak of COVID. I mean, we're okay, our kids are safe, but absolutely, we want to wrap our head around that. We definitely do. But I'm going to say January 1st. I just feel very strongly about
And
that.
how do you think your students feel about that?
Well, what do you mean? How do you think?
Well, I don't think, so can I just make one? I don't think we individually as Board of Ed members can give.
We were here for 3 hours and 2 board members have left in the 10 minutes that we have spoken.
Because you have comorbidities that would probably.
But you were here for 3 hours.
Can I just say point of order for just a second, please?
Hold on.
You just have to leave now.
And I think that maybe this is why people are afraid to have the conversation. I will tell you right now, I am not afraid to have the conversation. I am glad that you're here, and I'm thankful specifically that you just went through kind of what you're looking for. I know myself, I do not have any problem. And I would support saying and having a conversation with our community, because I want people to know the work that we're doing, because we are. I mean, this has been responsive, and I felt like, as we've been going through, I know I'm thinking of different ways and things that we could possibly intertwine within our district that will help. So I don't know how other people have, processed the information. I know for myself, I have a biracial family, and I loved a black man as my father for 35 years. And coming here, we grew up in a very diverse community. We grew up in Slime. Coming here, I myself have gotten the side out. I myself have felt indifferent when I hadn't felt that way in probably 15, 20 years. So for me, kind of definitely hearing some of the stories from some of our students was emotional for me, and it is a little emotional for me to talk about, and forgive me, because I don't want any student to feel the way that Amari Ward felt and feels, and some of the experiences that I listened to were hurtful, and I don't want our children to feel that, or any child to feel that. So immediately I'm hoping that people ask themselves, what can we do as people, as citizens, and of course here, what can I do here? What can we do here?
Thinking about, if I can just back up and say what I had planned. But I do want to bring attention to the fact that there were 2 board members who sat here for 3 hours, and then all of a sudden in the 10 minutes after we spoke, we're starting to be concerned about COVID impact to teachers. That speaks volumes to me.
Yeah, I don't think that's fair. I mean, listen.
Okay, let me back up.
Okay.
Let me back up.
All right, go ahead. Which one to share?
My name is Nikki Padilla. I grew up in East Lyme. I attended East Lyme schools. I'm a mom. I'm an educator. I taught in New London for several years, and I saw the juxtaposition of the inequity in New London versus East Lyme. I attended East Lyme football games where my students were called all sorts of names, racial slurs, and what have you. So I'm well aware of the racism that exists in this town. And I'm not saying it exists in this board, but it exists in this town. And we started off this whole meeting at 5 o'clock with Ms. Mondello's statements. And I think that they perfectly illustrate why these initiatives are needed. Because there's a lot of misunderstanding about Black Lives Matter. And equity is not a political stance. Equity is just what's good and right. And so I have a sort of a timeline. And my focus tonight is on professional development as a teacher. That's, my focus. So June 7th is when we had our protest, and when East Lyme for Black Lives Matter was formed. And very quickly after that, the teachers in East Lyme got together and formed this diversity committee, which is what it was originally called, and now we're calling it the Equity and Inclusion Committee, rightfully so. That was very quickly formed. You have a lot of very passionate teachers in this district, and I have personally worked with several of them. because I was also the Holocaust education coordinator for the Jewish Federation, and I did the Encountering Survivors program, which is now which has an offshoot, Encountering Differences, that East Lyme Public Schools will be participating in. And I participated in this committee from the beginning, and have had these conversations from the beginning. And at the very first meeting on June 29th, teachers spoke about how they wanted training in this area. They did not feel equipped to have these conversations, and I think tonight demonstrates that perfectly, because clearly we are not equipped to have these conversations as adults to adults. Teachers are having a great deal of difficulty trying to figure out how they're going to have these conversations with students in their position as a teacher, not representing the school district, not just representing themselves, which is what we're doing here. So they spoke very passionately. How do you want us to respond? How do you want us to respond? I don't feel equipped to have these conversations in my classroom. When they bring up George Floyd, when they bring up protest, when they bring up wanting to talk about everything that has happened in this country in the last couple months, how do I respond? I need training. Several teachers said that in this meeting, and I listened, and that's why I've been pushing, and that's why I have been so passionate, because I am a teacher, and I understand, and I'm trying to speak for them because they're afraid to speak in the same way that I'm not. So that happened on June 29th. In response, our organization met, had meetings, discussions, pulled together teachers from all over Connecticut, not just in East Lyme, but in New London, in Middletown, as part of this group forming this document of professional development resources. And that's something that I know Jeff has seen it, and we then sent it to all of you. But it was sent to the East Lyme Public Schools Administration on July 20th. Okay. And so they had this resource. It is virtual trainings, it is books, it is speakers. It was all of these different options that could have been put into place. And what we were hoping for was that they would be when we heard that there were going to be 4 days set aside before the start of the school year, we thought, great, they can do a half-day training or what have you. And even if there wasn't time for that, there would be time for the video that we would be putting together, which would be about 15 minutes. And even if there wasn't time for that, there would be time to do a virtual training that teachers could participate in asynchronously. So then August 14th, Safe Schools list of required training was sent out to every teacher. On that list were things like, the normal stuff in terms of bloodborne pathogens and things like that. Nowhere on there was the list of anti-racist training. Turns out, Safe Schools had a module that could have easily been added to this list of required things for teachers to view asynchronously. It didn't even need to happen necessarily in these 4 days prior to school. So I guess, so Safe Schools has a diversity awareness, staff to student and cultural competence and racial bias module that is 30 minutes long. And when I looked at the professional development plan for August 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, and September 4th, there are 11 hours there where it is either individual prep or teaching planning. And I guess my question was, why wasn't the module for safe schools included in, I'm sorry, the safe schools diversity module included in this list when it could have easily been? And could you also clarify why some sort of anti-racist professional development training was not included in these 11 unscheduled hours?
Yes, as a question?
Yes. Can the administration explain why when there is a 30-minute diversity awareness module provided by Safe Schools, that the district did not utilize that along with the other modules included in the training list for East Line Public Schools?
First of all, Nick, we have about 7 hours, 7.5 hours of virtual training mandates that have to come forth and be done, right down to human trafficking, because I got the email, why are we doing human trafficking? Well, it's a mandate, it's a state law. Have to have all of those components done. So that takes up our virtual PD time with teachers. Those other days that are in there, we have so much to do with teachers on training them in they've just gotten their devices. They have to plan and develop instruction, okay, for a hybrid model and the virtual Viking model within 4 days back on site.
I don't envy them at all.
I don't either.
I know
I don't either.
I
It's
know
a
the work
huge,
that you have been
huge
doing, and I know the work that they have
Yes,
been doing.
I know.
But what I'm
And
talking
contract,
about
let me
is
finish,
30 minutes.
Let me finish. And then contractually, they have one of those days is their day. That's your teacher planning day. We can't touch that contractually. So now you're down to 4 days that we have to work with them in prepping and planning for the start of the year. I know you sat here and listened tonight, the amount of work that has to go into reopening our schools. We talked at policy. We are going to share resources, as I stated, to them so they can utilize and reference for the beginning of the school year. And then we were using that October 12th, which is going to come quick for training on equity and diversity. That was the plan that we talked about.
So your answer of, just so I have it clear, your answer of why the 30-minute diversity training was not included in the state schools list is because there was already several hours, and so we didn't want to add.
And there's not enough hours in those days to be able to fully equip our teachers.
I will also have to say that the requirement to finish those safe school modules was as of October 1st. So teachers are required to complete the safe school modules by October 1st. And so my question is, could they not have also done 30 minutes of diversity awareness when that is what they're asking for as part of that safe schools?
As I said, that we're planning to give them resources that they can access and they can utilize. I feel if we give teachers one more thing to do, they're going to have such a, we're going to have social and emotional concerns. That's the other piece. Them walking back on site, we have to be addressing their social and emotional concerns. We're just coming back after 6 months.
But they're expressing concern
COVID.
that they can't address this issue. That's their social emotional concern.
That was the plan that we laid out to support them in reopening. Remember, reopening is first. This is second.
This is part of reopening. They have to be prepared to talk about this subject. I know I'm pushing you, Jeff, and I know that I'm a thorn in your side. And I have to tell you, I do think that you are phenomenal. But the reason why I keep pushing is because the tendency for us, if I'm going to be totally real, as white people, is to put this off. And we cannot continue doing nothing, saying nothing, or putting it off speaks volumes.
There's where we're struggling a little bit. Let me just finish the question and compare.
And I'm
There's
sorry.
where we're struggling just a little bit because this board, I think, has done more in the last couple months than I think they've done on a lot of different items as it pertains to this. I mean, just redistricting our schools and doing our renovations took 10 years. This is a huge, huge item that we're talking about. The board has done a lot, I think, on this, and we've accomplished quite a bit already in preparations. I know how fast you want this to happen, but I think it was said earlier, the faster you move on something right now, such a big, huge topic, that's where mistakes can be. And we can't afford to make mistakes with this because it could be. So
How is adding a 30-minute module a mistake?
We've talked about that. Let's go on to Erica's question.
And I want to make a statement. I've been waiting for a while. I think that your statement that you made, Serena, is pretty innocuous. What I would like to suggest you do is to send it to us, and then it would be in our board minutes as a statement that they have given to us, so that we have something that we can review. It's a draft, and it's our first step. It's our first toe in the water. And we can look at it, run it by Jessica Ritter, see if it's safe, good, the right way to start. And then I think in the meantime, to appease you, Nikki, perhaps we can suggest to our faculty, perhaps there's a lot of really good online training that's available, that's free. I've talked about this before. The African American Smithsonian Institute has some really good bias training, implicit bias. It's for educators. It's a good first step. And I know we all want to get started, but I also think that it's a big step. And I know it's 500 years of racism. And so I think if you send the statement, it'll give us a chance to look at it. We'll feel like we've got that. We can maybe suggest at least to faculty.
That's what we're going to do. Yep.
No. I mean, just the option to do some online training, you know, in the interest that they know that this might be coming, you know, it will be coming down the pipe.
You mean prior to the actual training that they
Just
are
right
supposed
now,
to
I'm
have,
sure they're
right?
curious.
They're
I mean,
supposed to have
I've done it just because out of.
The training is for October. With all
No. I'm just saying.
Resources are
Just
going to go out.
FYI, faculty, this is a really cool website.
Yeah, exactly. They had some great resources they shared, and I hope they keep sharing them because they were fabulous. So I had outlined a couple that I thought were most relevant and wanted to share those.
There's not a teacher that I know that doesn't do their homework 24/7. They sleep their job, you know, they wake up, they dream about it. Given a resource, they'll look into it. I know teachers. And
that's what we were planning on doing.
Right, so perfect.
Exactly.
So I feel like it's kind of a win-win, and I know it's not as far as you want it to go, but I feel like it's a step.
So Eric first.
Okay.
No, you're done? You can go right now.
Okay, I think that is a great start. I'll send you the statement that I've written up. As far as the training goes, if it is impossible for that to be implemented at this time, I think it's great that the resources are being sent out. I think that people who want to engage in those resources will. I think the problem will probably lie with people who don't want to engage in those resources and will actively avoid those resources. But if other teachers in the community are engaging in those resources, then that will start conversations, which will then lead to conversations with those people who are trying to avoid it, which I think is a great thing. And I think that shouldn't be avoided either, because I think if some teachers are doing it, if the people in this room are engaging in those conversations, and if the committee is engaging in those conversations, that will spread to the rest of the school, and it will end up, you know, in the heads of those teachers who are trying to avoid this topic, which I think is great. As far as training for teachers, which is something that we think is extremely important and top priority as far as our group goes, for that October training, is there a plan for that training yet? If not, when will a plan for that training be decided? I know there's a lot going on, but if we could also get some kind of date or some kind of information on who you'll be using, on if you need us to help you provide someone or some kind of organization who can help with that, that's where we come in. We really want to help with those things because we know that there is so much on your plate. And if you need help planning that October training, you need more resources, you need people to come in and speak, former students, alumni, parents, we're there for that as well. So if there's some kind of if we could have some kind of dialogue about the training in October, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and that would be helpful, definitely, to hear, some additional thoughts and resources to tap into the work that you've already done, for October. So, yeah, that's some of the next conversations.
So is there a plan at all yet?
We have not pulled, we've been looking at the resources, we have not pulled an exact plan together. We've had conversations about some different things that could be put in place.
Like to meet with us about developing a plan, or is that something that you all do as a board specifically?
No, the board wouldn't necessarily be involved in the planning for the professional development. Administratively, we would do that and work with, hopefully, the equity and the inclusion committee can be formulated. That was the idea, to have that group really be the driver, because they have to drive as we move into the year and future years. They need to be the driver of those things and take ownership of those things so there can be follow-up. And there's where you have membership across the entire school and our parent population. So that's what's in process right now with that.
Can I just ask a question? So that's what you're speaking to is what you two are sitting on. You're sitting on the committee or no?
No, that's different. No, but we would like one or two members from this group to join the equity. And
there is a committee of high school teachers who
Right.
meet every Monday with us.
Exactly.
Basically, just as a building level, kind of like, let's have a conversation about this. Not really as an official committee, because committees can do specific things. So what Mr. Nathan is talking about is an equity and inclusion committee that's like specifically for the school. That's a driving force for those things.
Exactly. We have a board member on there.
Yep. Hold on 1 second. So Mr. Left was first, and then we'll get to the.
So when you mentioned the Safe Schools training, it jogged my memory. I was only new last year. So I actually went into my profile, and one of the new employee trainings is the module that you mentioned that's not on the recurring training that's
I'm
published.
sorry, could you say it a little louder? I can't hear you from over here.
So when you mentioned that one module of
Yes.
training that wasn't on the list, it jogged my memory, so I went back to my profile and Safe Schools. And that is a module that's required for all new employees. It's a one-time training,
Oh.
so that's why it's probably not on that list.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's
So now,
wonderful
can I
to
just
hear.
ask, so it's a one-time training, but not a reoccurring training? But just
Right.
once, you
So
just have it once.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, it is only a 30-minute module. And
But that's a
it's great
thought to kind
value,
of
but-
think on, just for
but it is in
myself.
there,
I go
so-
through yearly
Yeah,
trainings, I
I
go
forgot
through
about that.
biannual trainings, I go through every years, lots of different ones, so that's something that maybe we can look at to incorporate, for,
So I'm sorry, Mr. Lund, I don't know who you are. So you were hired last year, and as part of your new hiring,
Yeah, the new employee training.
Any
that-
new.
you needed to have participated in that module.
Correct.
That's wonderful.
So, Lee, go ahead.
I mean, I think that's great. I'd also argue that doing one 30-minute training once is fully inadequate, right? It's like the dental hygiene paradigm, you don't actually teach once a year. I also am curious, because I know, I think someone had just mentioned that our high school teachers have been meeting with East Line of Black Lives Matter. Do we also have groups at the middle school and elementary school?
So right now at the middle and elementary school, it's sort of an offshoot of the social emotional learning. They're trying to focus on responsive classroom and possibly bringing that back as a way to address it at that age level. So they're sort of tying it in, but the hope certainly is that the equity and inclusion committee would be district wide. That is the hope. And we have talked about that a few times, and we're trying to figure out how to make that happen.
I know that Annalise also has
Yes.
has
Oh,
things
God.
to say about the minority recruitment plan and the hiring. So just as far as the October training goes, is could we just be in email contact with Mr. Newman about when we can work on, whatever we can do to help with that and things like that? Is it okay if we just email you about that?
Yeah,
Okay, awesome.
definitely.
Okay, so Annalise, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes. Go ahead, and thank you for being so patient.
Okay,
A long night.
of course.
Thank you.
I guess thank you all for still being here almost 4 hours later. I know it's a long meeting for everybody, so I guess so. I'll just introduce myself real quick. I'm Annalise. I graduated in 2016 with Serena from Eastham High School. In May, I graduated from UConn, and I just started medical school at the University of Vermont. So specifically, I'm going to be talking about the minority recruitment plan, and I know you guys are already kind of working on something, but we kind of just had like a few thoughts that we wanted to run by you guys real quickly. And I do first want to acknowledge, like, I understand with the whole like COVID reopening, it is very important. So I do appreciate that you are taking the time to put us on your agenda. We are frustrated, but no one's like pointing fingers or placing blame or anything. It's just frustrating. And personally, like as a person of color, I'm biracial. And so this is just frustration that has been carried around for a while that is now amplified by the current state of things that are going on. So like to not be having conversations as often or as quickly as we would like, it's something that I've definitely dealt with for a long time, but I'm able to go home and have these types of conversations. And, you know, like the admins of Islam for BLM, like we have these types of conversations, but not everyone, I would say, is as lucky, because I do feel very fortunate to be able to engage in these types of conversations with people and go home, but not everyone gets to do that. So that's kind of just like my little spiel for the beginning. And I guess related to hiring, first, I just kind of want to address some comments that were made during the open comment in the beginning. In no way am I saying that hiring should be on the basis of race, just be, oh, we're trying to make a diverse staff, so let's hire people of color. That's not at all what we're trying to say. Obviously, everyone should be like qualified before they're hired for a job. But recruiting minority candidates will help make the staff more diverse, which exposes students to diverse perspectives, which, again, as a person of color growing up in East Lyme, I think definitely is needed. The, you know, microaggressions I experienced in East Lyme High School, like, I really would have loved for something like this to have happened when I was growing up here, because I think a lot of those things could have been handled better earlier. And I'm not saying I had a bad experience, but yeah, so the minority recruitment policy and hiring is not to say just hire minority students. And, you know, but if there are two qualified candidates, you know, making sure that you are advocating for minority candidates as well who are qualified is important. And, you know, I don't want to like spend too much time on that, but if anyone would like to have a conversation about that to clarify where there are misunderstandings in this, more than happy to do that. So the minority recruitment plan, I know you guys are talking about like auditing things, and there's already kind of a plan in the works. And, you know, the current one from East Lyme is from 1998, which is very outdated. And so I'm happy that you guys are working on a new one. The only thing I would say is I think some of the language, we were present at the policy subcommittee meeting last week or a couple weeks ago. And so I think like the language should be a little bit more specific. So not only is it about actively recruiting from, you know, schools and institutions where there's like a greater population of people of color, but also making it so that like they'd want to work here. So I remember in one of our public school subcommittee meetings for our Black Lives Matter group, one member who's a person of color said that he grew up in Salem and went to East Lyme High School and everything, but like left and didn't necessarily feel like it was the place to come back to as a person of color. I know my brother went to East Lyme High School. He moved away. It's just, you know, actively recruiting minority candidates is great, but making sure that this is an environment that people of color like will feel drawn to and feel like, okay, this is a place that's going to be a safe environment for me, and where they can just like be their best selves without having, you know, that extra stressor of like, what is the social environment here? Because, right, it's not political, this is a social issue. And I just wanted to emphasize, look, we have great academics at East Lyme. we're a blue ribbon school, and that's great, but the social environment and what we stand for has to also be up to those types of standards. And so like Connecticut has a resource. They have like a plan or like a guide, essentially. It's more of a guide on how to recruit minority candidates, and it's it's also about using language. So language that could be used in policy, language that can be used in a recruitment plan, because I think, well, it's great that we're getting something done. I think the language has to be a little bit more like, okay, here's how we're going to do it. Like, here's our plan. Here are the action steps. And I can send that link. But one thing that really stood out to me about that was the beyond compliance section. So it's not like we're just doing this to do it, but, you know, fixing a policy doesn't always fix the problem, someone said, and this guide, especially this section, really addressed that. So having action steps in your policy, and while they show purpose, the actions will speak louder than the words. So taking the actions, following through on them, and being held accountable for them is what's actually going to show the commitment. Like, the policies show purpose, and that's great, but the purpose isn't going to mean as much if they aren't actually like showing the committed actions. So I think people aren't going to remember like, oh, like the East Line Board of Ed like made this policy. Like, that's great. Like, I, as a person of color, I am going to remember when this policy is actually like followed through upon. And so I think this guide is a really great resource. And so I was just wondering if like necessarily you would be interested in looking at it and possibly incorporating the language that they use. And also I was interested, I know a task force was mentioned, because I think accountability to make sure that the plan is updated more than 22 years at a time and actually followed through upon, I think is extremely important. So I just kind of am wondering like how you guys plan on addressing accountability also. So thank you for listening to me kind of go on, but those are my questions for you.
Thank you so much.
I know part of the audit is to really kind of take a look at the language, specifically, you know, with the minority recruitment policy. You can take what you said and some of that verbiage, work with the attorney and Shipman Goodwin on the verbiage that they have as their model policy, and where we blend those two together. That's where we get our attorney involved to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up. If we, for whatever reason, didn't do something what was outlined in a policy or really held us or pigeonholed us into a corner, we got to be careful. Not that I'm saying that certain language would do that, but there's where you get my drift. We have to make sure that the wording is right, and that the attorneys can say, okay, that's something that sounds good, and we can go with that. Do we need to make it more robust? Absolutely. It's from 1998. There's still other policies. That's not the only one. We're getting through, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of policies as we roll through, and this is one of them that just hadn't been updated yet. So I'm glad it's at the forefront, and it's going to get done.
So when you say like, working on the language just a draft, I guess how quickly, not, I guess, because I don't want to like keep rushing you guys. I know you guys are working on a lot and lots of different policies in different areas, but I guess like incorporating that more language, because I think really the language, I know it's just a first draft, but the language does need to be more specific, because my worry is that I know you have to like work with the attorney and not like pigeonhole yourselves, but my worry is that if the language isn't right, like it's not like it won't be enforced as well, or you actually won't be able to like act upon it as much or as far like as you could. I guess, does that make sense?
And I think we also like to definitely request to be at every policy meeting going forward, because that way we can help you hold you accountable, basically. I mean, if that's sort of the purpose, and if it's true that that's what you want to do, then we're perfectly good. We can be used that way. We're at your service, and holding you accountable is a way we can be at your service. So we'd love to be at every policy meeting, and I hope you can confirm that right now.
I can't confirm that right now, Ben, but I know we're going to work together, and we're going to do the best job that we can. And I will talk with the board and the subcommittee of the policy group, and we'll move forward. Obviously, it's a public meeting, And you're always welcome, and we want your input. You've given a lot of input. We want to keep that going.
Are we allowed to give input at these specific policy meetings? Because I know there is we're all extremely busy. So like 3 of us are students, 1 of us is a working mother. Like we're all very busy, and you obviously all are too, but just, making sure we go to these policy meetings and actually are able to like give feedback in the moment, because when there's time between, like so much happens that sometimes ideas can get lost. We don't remember, but sometimes like in the moment we could jump in and give feedback, like constructive feedback. So I'm wondering, like, would we be able to be like active participants in the policy meeting rather than just sitting there?
It's up to the board and subcommittee. These typically no. That's not what happens because there's a public comment on subcommittee meetings. But that's something that the board can discuss, and if they want to add public comment onto those meetings or involve you in the process, then they can do that.
When would that discussion happen? Would that discussion happen at the beginning of the policy meeting or right now?
I don't think right now we don't have the full board here, and I think that's an important aspect that you mentioned earlier, that the full board having discussions about these things.
So before the policy meeting, maybe we'll go to the policy meeting. Maybe first item could be discussing whether we can speak or not.
You'll have to talk with the policy meeting, but I can't answer that right now. I don't know.
All right, maybe we could follow up with email then.
Ben, hold on 1 second. So is it possible?
Can I speak for a moment?
Yeah, just hold on 1 second. I think, is that?
No, there's no.
No.
Yeah, there's no public comment. Public comment's over. So the only one we're engaging right now is the Black Lives Matter group and those members.
Okay, so my question is it possible for Ben, Annalise, whichever representative that would like to write something in for the policy? I mean, I'm not on the policy, so when I was at that meeting, I couldn't even speak. I was given a thumbs up. So I didn't even have the opportunity to give feedback at that policy and report. So is it something that they can put in writing? That way it's acknowledgement that we have it. I mean, I think that it's a good idea for the guide to the recruitment and just take a look. We don't even know what that Jessica is going to bring back for the policy. So I know that timeline, just hold on 1 second, and then 3 weeks is going to be coming. That's when we kind of can put a spin, or not spin, but really, put our expectations is the best word, I think, that what we're looking for and what we're, want to see in those policies. So is that an option?
I think putting something in writing is definitely a positive thing to do. And
That's just what I want to share with you. Okay. So we have actually sent to administration, I believe it was, the copy of the policy from the State Department of Education that has the language and the wording that we
Yeah, no, I totally get what Annalise is saying, because even for myself, I mean, I'm going back a couple of years now, pulling a bus policy and what the intent was and kind of where I thought it should go, and then kind of how I was told, well, you can go this far, but you can't go that far. You can say this, but you can't say that, but you can, it's in the word. And I get what she's saying, because you want it to be powerful. You want it to be accountable. And I can't deny that myself. I mean, I'm looking to set, I hate to say new tone, but I am. That was kind of the thought in having the policies pulled. I knew that was the first thing that we needed to do, step by step. And I can relate with frustration on kind of feeling like stuck in the mud because you want to get this done. And I'm a tick-tock kind of person. I'd like to have the results. And it was very hard for me when I first came on this board, because it took forever to get something done and constant conversation. But never giving up on what you're looking for. So, I mean, I can't assure just for myself enough to everyone that's listening that, I mean, we're working on a lot of things, but this is something that we are taking very seriously, and we want to invoke the changes here in our district. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think everything that's going happening right now is awesome, and I think the reason why I was just talking specifically about the language is because we were attending that policy meeting where we saw the screen share of the example that was given for their minority recruitment plan from the law firm. So we did like see the words that they were using in the how it looked, and it reading through it was a little vague. It was a little like, you could kind of work around it. It's like, oh, do this, but like, you don't have to. So I think that's why we're talking about the language that's in it. But I think the conversation is premature as well, because we need to see what the law firm brings back to the policy committee in 3 weeks or however long. And we were able to attend that meeting however long ago. So I think the expectation is that we'll be able to again. Whether or not we'll be able to speak, hopefully that can be discussed in the beginning of the meeting with the other subcommittee members, if that's possible. If not, I think that we'll just have to look and see if the plan is something that we think is up to par with what the community wants and what our group thinks is necessary in recruiting minorities. But I think the conversation is premature as of right now. We can see what the law firm brings back as far as that minority recruitment plan in 3 weeks. And if we could get the link to that meeting, that would be awesome.
I just want to add, just have a little bit of faith in us. We're pretty good people.
Of course.
So I wanna just to put that one out there, because we're working hard at things, and
of course, and I think it's only I think the only hesitance, obviously, we don't have specific relationships with any of you, know you, like who you are, your core, knowing these people, things like that. The only thing that we have to work with is our experiences, and unfortunately, not all of them are positive, and not all of them have been kind of active and excited about this type of thing. So I apologize if we sound kind of negative in any way. We're really not trying to. It's just kind of having grown up here and having seen, things happen and just seeing the response to things. It is kind of hard when that's all that we have to work with, especially having when we graduated 4 years ago. It's it's hard to think that much has changed, but obviously I'm so proud and so excited of everything that's happening.
And one last thing that I'm going to call on, because it's important for me to say that this is not an us and them. And I want you to know.
So I'm just want to clarify with the policy. Shipman and Goodman gives us the legal state statute policy, and there's some verbiage that has to stay because it's state statute, and then there's language that we add because we like the policy, the D and East line policy, so we add language and we subtract language that we can legally subtract or add. But there's some language that has to be in there by statute, but we do make it an East line own policy by switching up the language. Because what happens is, Jessica, the Shipman and Goodman, the company, we used to use Payback. I don't know if you know Payback is, it's a Board of Ed company. We used to use their policy and alter it to fit us the same way. But there are some lines, like you'll see at the bottom, it says, state statute. We have to leave that pieces of it in, but the rest of it we can make our own. So that's usually why it takes us a lot to discussion, because we want it to be ours. You don't want it to be like a cookie cutter, rubber stamp, boilerplate policy. We like it to reflect who we are.
Of course, and that's great to hear, because I think that was part of the thing, just using exactly what they had said.
I don't think in the 13 plus years I've been here, we've ever just said, okay, it's been approved by the lawyer and that's what we're going to use. We've always made it our own.
Awesome.
With our
That's great
beliefs
to
and
hear.
our
It's
stuff.
just that we didn't have that prior knowledge.
No,
I
so
think
that's why I figured I should explain to you. You did see that up on the board. What you don't see is the past, where we always make it ours by adding who we are into that. So I just wanted to tell you.
All right. Now, does anybody have any questions or want to pursue a little more, or how do we feel? Are we feeling like we're going to move on? Yeah?
I think we should move on to our retreat, just so everybody can hear what that came out of that, the white paper that you published, that's and everything that came out of that.
Okay, so I'm feeling pretty good about moving forward with it. And if, you know, with Tim not being here tonight and me sitting in, you know, we were gonna wait actually to kind of talk about our direction, but I think that we should. Because maybe, you know, it just needs to be. I mean, I think that, you know, we have a workshop every year to kind of give us the opportunity to sit with each other and kind of really set our goals forward. And, you know, we did a survey and we had, I think, 28 things, you know, on that list. And, you know, not funny, but kind of is. You know, I had a moment at that workshop that is to my expense for sure. And but it was derived from so much info. And then not having the info that I truly needed in order to come back to a successful result. And I found myself very frustrated because of the triples I did. And I did not like everyone feeling so overwhelmed and not really being really what we needed to hone in on. And I feel like a lot of our parents in our community, hundreds of people, had a Mrs. Carlson moment. When our plan went out and they got information and then they didn't have enough information to make this and to go here and to go there. So, do you want to go through the letter that Tim wrote, or no?
Well, I think everybody saw a copy of it, and I've got about 3% left on my battery. I'm sorry, 11%. But if you want, I can read it, or did you want me to read it, or did you have a chance to?
Did you have a chance
to review? I mean, it really honed in on the fact that, you know, we should be focusing. We have a lot of different things, a lot of passion, in a lot of different areas, but we really should, you know, hone in on those two major items of reopening and cultural awareness and diversity. And that basically is, you know, kind of how Tim ended this one pager, and we had gotten some feedback, you know, from some of us, and then I worked with him on this a little bit. But you know, the lesson supporting the success of the 2021 school year during COVID-19 pandemic is critical. You know, it clearly presents, you know, an unprecedented set of challenges for our entire district. Equally as challenging is moving our culture against racism. Success will require learning and change from everyone. There are many other opportunities to improve the answer district. Board of Education must focus on these two challenges and do them right. Tim's big thing is, we kind of said earlier, and I agree with him, you know, we have to do it right. And both of these have to get done the right way. Reopening and it summarizes this, but it's a way of changing.
Yeah, I just want to say how grateful I am that we've settled on two things.
Yeah, this is 28.
But I think historically it's been super tempting to go after multiple things and try to have a lot of different priorities. And I think the two things you're going after are the correct things. And if we're putting all of our time and energy behind these two things, I'm like 100% on board with that being the approach to our school year.
Yeah, that is.
Everybody feel that same way?
I do. I do.
Yeah, that was the list, I know. It was huge.
But I think that that's just, you know, things that we've all kind of brought up. We wanted to do this, we wanted, and in a perfect world, in a perfect time, and we, and we're really just, I think, being so affected by COVID and the challenges that it's really presented. And we have to do it better. So, Aaron, do you have anything, Kate? No?
No, I
You're getting
actually,
tired,
well,
getting
no,
tired, yeah.
I'm
So at 9 o'clock. Administration reports.
Yeah, I had nothing really new to add. I mean, you very happy. Our world has been, and then he's working on the cohort, he has to get all that out.
Did you get your cohort yet? I wonder if they go for
No, I haven't gotten.
And Mariana, do you have anything to add?
No, I do.
I know we have not had academics, athletics, and activities, but I know that Amy and I will be setting something up. I think that the London learning model.
Yeah.
I do think that Massachusetts at some point has to, once things get settled, as far as.
Yes, it's got to tie into this, and Barry said it well.
He really did.
He did, he said it well.
He really did.
Tie in.
The policy review committee, you have anything else to add?
I think
pretty
the
much
minutes
noted
were pretty.
everything on policy tonight.
I think the minutes were pretty thorough.
I think so too. And,
We should have a finance committee.
Can I skip over you?
You skipped over me. I wouldn't have said anything else.
I'm so sorry.
I'm patient. Okay.
Please, go ahead.
We covered COVID expenses and we covered the LED lighting. The other thing, just broadly, that Mariana spent a lot of time working on our internal controls, and she's made a lot of progress. We both on the receipts, cash or checks coming in. We spent a lot of time earlier. Now we've gotten the other piece on the expenditure side and making sure that there are reconciliations and we have segregation of duties and all that stuff. So Mariana has done a great job at that, and we went through those and really we had a few comments, but for the most part we're in good shape. So thank you, Mariana.
Thank you, Karen. Personnel action, we don't have anything.
Although I was surprised to see that.
Board comments. Agenda items, we pretty much know there's going to be two things that we identified.
You cannot adjourn the meeting. Pardon? You can't adjourn the meeting because we can't vote.
Barry is
Barry's online.
Barry's
He's
online.
online. Barry, are you online?
Oh, no, Eric's here.
I'm here.
Yes,
You're good, Barry's there.
yes, I'm online. So can you see me online?
Yeah.
Can you see me online?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, good. All right, so on mute.
All right, can I get
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
all in favor?
Second, yeah.
When's our next meeting?
9:14, I believe, Kate, is what I have on the calendar.
The regular board meeting.
Regular, that's a regular
I
board
was
meeting,
just gonna
yes.
say that you never know, there could be a special
I
vote
think-
in there.
Yeah, there might be with reopening.
Thank you all very
You
much.
gotta-
Thank you.
I said all in favor.
Perfect.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Barry.
everybody.
Thank you very much.